Right, come on, you four-eyed fat-faced fool. Tell us what's going to be in the new podcast from the two mics.
Well, plenty of buffoonery from you and lots of sense from me. What else?
When are we going to be able to literally build a bridge between Earth and the moon?
Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the two mics on talkSPORT. England have won another World Cup and Mike Parry can't stop talking about it. That'll be because of the Everton connections with a few of the players. Meanwhile, England's number one goalkeeper Joe Hart can't get a job in the Premier League. And Pep Southgate should be looking for another forwards coach after Alan Russell's efforts at Hampden over the weekend. You might remember he's the world's number one attacking coach. 08717 223344. Also coming up on the show, we'll be talking to political heavyweight Peter Oborn about another mad week in the world of Westminster. And we've got a sparkling new edition of Heroes and Villains. And after the past weekend, we're going to struggle to only pick two of each. You're listening to the two mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics, and I'm delighted to say at the start of another week, it's time to say a very good morning to Mr. Mike, a Porky, a Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
And a very good morning to you, Mike. And what a sparkling weekend, I can't tell you. One thing we haven't actually mentioned in terms of British domination as well was old Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton, yes.
Who surged through and start to finish, you know, a
only 12 points behind now, isn't he?
Only 12 points behind now, and looking very good indeed. But you are right, the main focus has to be 11 o'clock yesterday morning, right, settle down there, put the old telly on, got the game going.
I'm amazed that you watched it, actually, because last week you were telling us how you weren't that interested in the under-20s and that basically anyone who does well in that, as proven as well by the statistics, actually, doesn't really tend to emerge into the full kind of, white heat of the Premier League.
Well, what I think is quite interesting is that the under-21 team won 1-0. It was scored by Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah.
And there is a slight difference. Two of the outstanding players were Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Ademola Lookman, OK? In fact, some said Lookman was the boy of the competition. Now, I know this is all Everton-based, but there were four players in the team who came from Everton. But what I'm saying is the great advantage of Everton's youth setup, or one of the great advantages, these players have been bought in. So it's not like, they've come through the ranks with Everton since 8, although other players within that squad have done.
Yeah.
But Lookman was brought in from Charlton.
Yeah.
Dominic Calvert-Lewin was brought in as well, Sheffield United, I think. And so their career has already been on the move in a progressive way upwards.
But what I don't understand about all of this system, and we've been listening to some of it on the Brazil Sports Breakfast, of course, if you have an academy at Everton and you use it to not only nurture players but to bring them in from elsewhere, if they're not actually going to ever end up playing for Everton in the terms of the full the starting 11 for the Premier League, what is the point of having the academy?
Well, it's a very good question, that, because every club has got at least one academy. Some clubs have got more. Some clubs have got 2 and 3 academies, OK?
Yeah.
So what you say is, I think, because there's so much money around in the Premier League these days, it's wheat and chaff. And I think they bring on as many kids as they can. And at a certain age, a certain critical time, they think, no, he's not as good as some of the players we can buy from overseas.
Is it sort of like scooping up everything in the sea and hoping that in the midst of all of that you might find an oyster?
A pearl or something like that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think it must be like that. But look, we've got David Unsworth coming on shortly on the show. David Unsworth, the very successful...
Who was himself part of a youth team, wasn't he, that was very successful?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Very successful. And in 93, I think that was. Yeah. And he's in charge of those Everton youngsters, and he's coming on to tell us, so we can ask him those questions. However, I do get the feeling, maybe it's obviously Everton my team, but I get the feeling that so many young players are emerging to be good from the Everton ranks. John Joe Kenny and Kieran Dowell, in addition to Lookman and Calvert-Lewin that we've spoken about. Right. 4 players in the team and a 5th Everton player within the squad. You have to say to yourself, they've already had chances at the Premier League level. Calvert-Lewin has scored in the Premier League. As I say, Ademola Lookman, he scored on his debut for Everton when we bought him from Charlton.
Well, I remember when Lookman played and we all said, this guy looks like a great player.
That's right.
And he may well be one of those that makes that sort of transmission up the ladder. Yeah. But what, in fact, if he doesn't, should he then go and play somewhere else? Because we've heard from Gareth Southgate in the wake of this victory saying, what we want is for the Premier League teams to keep these players and to make and develop them for the Premier League team. Surely it's up to him to pick the players that will go through the England ranks and play in the senior team if they can be, used to playing together.
I think he can only do that if they're playing regularly in the Premier League, week in, week out, can't he?
Well, I don't know.
Pep can't. Pep Southgate, that is.
Pep Southgate
can't pull him through himself. But to be honest, although you've concentrated on that, and it's a very valid point, this is not a new phenomenon.
Right.
You ask any footballer, even of our generation. I mean, I think I've told you about my mate Andy Wilde, who lived around the corner.
No, I don't think you have. But I can't believe it's only taken you 9 minutes to turn the story of England winning a World Cup into the bloke that used to live around the corner from you.
No.
Hey?
This guy was outstanding. He was about 6'1" when he was about 14. He used to score goals from the halfway line. Everybody was chasing him. He ended up at Arsenal, right?
Yeah. What about those goals that were nearly scored from the halfway line in this game, by the way?
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Absolutely right. And he was so outstanding that I thought he was going to be the next great superstar, but he wasn't good enough to get through the Arsenal youth team.
Right.
And in that youth team that he came through, none other players ever became Arsenal regulars. He played with boys who just fell by the wayside like he did.
Right.
What
did he end up doing then?
He's a painter and decorator. And what he did was he stayed there 2 years, and after coming back from an end-of-season tour, after the second season, he came back and he was called into an office, and rather cruelly, he was told by the Arsenal official, I know who the Arsenal official was.
There's no need to name him.
Yeah, no need to name him. I'm really sorry, son, but the next time you get into Highbury, you'll be coming through the turnstiles. Here's your cards. Thank you.
Well, I suppose there's no nice way of telling anybody that, is there?
No, that's right.
But why would he not, like many of these other players, I presume might do, why would he not end up, say, going and play for somewhere like Rotherham or going further down the leagues and looking for, Rushden and Diamonds?
Funny enough, he came back to Chester, where he'd been brought up. He went to Overley Secondary Modern, and he signed on with Chester. But then he was so disillusioned about what Chester had to offer compared to what the marble steps of Highbury had to offer that he literally became so disillusioned with football, he went and worked with his dad as a painter and decorator and then took over his business.
Chucked it in.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you have to ask the question about all of these players. And I do have to ask you one question as well. I mean, if all of these players were not from Everton, would you be as excited?
Oh, very much so.
I don't believe that.
Oh no, we've won competitions at various levels since '66, but this is the first time we have won a World Cup. So I can honestly say, if there wasn't even one single Everton player involved in the team or the squad, I would be absolutely thrilled for England's youth to have achieved this remarkable victory.
Yes. And when was the last Youth World Cup, Under-20s World Cup?
The last one?
Yeah.
Why are you asking?
Well, obviously you're such a fan of the World Cup, I presume you follow it with great alacrity.
Well, it's every 4 years, isn't it?
Are you sure?
Of course I am.
And where was the last one held?
Where was it held?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter where it was held, because listen, I'm not an expert on the Under-20 World Cup.
Apparently not.
And in fact,
you've only got involved in it in the last day because England happened to win it, and it happens to have 4 Everton players playing in it.
If you don't mind, I moved 2 hours aside yesterday, Sunday, after a very, very busy weekend to make sure.
Busy weekend doing what?
Well, mopping up after the drama of all last week.
Well, the drama still continues. We'll be talking about that later on as well.
And got it all sorted. So,
well, I'm glad about that. Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you're so enthused about youth football.
Yeah.
We want to hear from some of you people out there as well.
We do.
I don't believe that Mr. Parry will keep this up, because he said earlier to Alan Brazil, well, of course, we didn't want Tom Davies going out there because we need him for the Premier League. And that, I'm afraid, is the bottom line. 08717 22 3344. This is talkSPORT. David says this: how did England juniors go when Porky was El Supremo of everything and master of nothing at the FA?
What?
And here's somebody, Jamie, who says the World Cup, the Youth World Cup, is every 2 years, Porky. And obviously the Porky quiz should be on the history of the Under-20s World Cup, says Becky. He won't have to research anything.
Yeah, well, I've trapped it. I've set foot in these man traps before now, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Don't worry about it.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it. Now let's talk to one of the Everton stalwarts. He's a man that played a lot of youth football successfully himself. He's now involved with the Everton Academy, of course, as well.
Highly successfully.
David Unsworth. He's the under-23 coach at Everton. Mr. Unsworth, very good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Hi, Dave. Very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining us. You must feel as proud as Punch this morning, David.
Yeah, I think we all are, aren't we? Anybody who's a football fan, watching those lads yesterday lift the World Cup, it's, we're all delighted, and especially to see, from an Everton point of view, our boys doing so well. Everybody at the club is so proud of them.
Yes, that's right. You've already had a great season at Everton anyway, Dave. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the lads, we've had certain number of lads in the first team squad playing games. We've had a number of lads on loan.
Yeah.
The under-23 team won the league, which was a magnificent achievement considering the quality and some of the teams that have been on show. So all in all, the lads have produced performances both individually and collectively, and we're very proud of them.
David, myself and Porky were talking earlier about exactly what the academies achieve in Premier League football clubs, and Everton's obviously one of the more successful ones from what we can see. But the mixture of players interests me. Some have been brought in from other clubs, like Lookman's come from Charlton, others have come from Spurs, etc. And I mean, how do you work it out in terms of whether you have as many homegrown players as you can get, meaning that they've actually come from Liverpool, or you go and scout them from other clubs? How does it all work?
I think what we do is we look at the depth of the talent that we've got available. If we see and feel there's like a hole in any sort of position coming through the ranks, under 18s or under 23 level, the board and the chairman and the owner afford us the great opportunity of going into the market and maybe purchasing somebody who we feel can come into the under-23 group who has the potential to be in our first team. And we've done that quite successfully over the last 3 or 4 years with the likes of Lookman, Calvert-Lewin, Mason Holgate, to name just a couple. But it's because there might not be the talent that are around this club at that particular time in that certain position. But we would always afford our own lads the opportunity first.
Do you think, Dave, that at Everton, one of the reasons why it's working so well is that you and your staff are all ex-Evertonians? I mean, you've got people there who are legendary names. Duncan, of course, being one of them. But I mean, is there a spirit of the club? Not just Everton. Is there always a spirit of the club if former players are back there doing what you're doing?
Mike, I think it's a great point. I think it's so important that we have that at this club. From the very top all the way down to our foundation phase, we've probably got about 12 or 13 ex-players who have been in the system, who have been in our first team throughout the whole academy. So to pass on that experience, that knowledge, and also, we've got good coaches as well, don't get me wrong, and great staff. But when you couple that in about what this club means to those members of staff, it has nothing but a positive effect on our young players.
A lot of people talk about the World Cup winners in Brazil, Germany, of course, because they had 5 members of the youth team, the under-21 team that won the Euros in 2009. Including Mats Hummels, Mesut Ozil, Howardez and Boateng and all of that. I mean, is there a way of keeping this particular team together in that sense so that they do kind of just get used to playing with each other?
I think from my experience of looking at this team for the last 4 or 5 years, this team's been together for that length of time, under 17s, under 18s, all the way through. And what they're doing now is that they're going off into the clubs, and if I look at the majority of those players who played, they've got appearances in the first team, or most of them have got appearances in the first team. And when they meet up for the England squad, when they meet up for the international dates, this group have been together for a long, long time, and it's certainly paid dividend because they're a quality, tight-knit group who don't mind being away for a long time from home, and they're just producing great football and they're winning as well. And we mustn't forget that, everybody talks about development and, individual development, but you must win as well. Along your journey, you must learn how to win as well, and that's so important.
That's fantastic, yeah. Now, how does this work again, Dave? There's got to be a bit of internal politics in a football club. You've got Mr. Koeman. He's now got to put together a first-team squad for next season. We don't know whether Romelu Lukaku's going to go or stay. We've got young Dominic Calvert-Lewin doing a great job. Part of your responsibility is to push these guys up and put them in front of Mr. Koeman and say, these guys are ready. Part of his job is to say, well, I'm not sure they're quite ready enough. How does that relationship work?
Well, first of all, I've got a great relationship with Ronald, and we talk every day about the young players, about the first team, and what we don't do is jump into any decisions and say anything if they're not ready, because Ronald will decide that, and quite rightly so. What we do know is that if they're not ready just yet, they might be in a couple of years' time or a year's time. But what we know is we've got a real depth of young talent that are producing results at their own age groups, and we've got to keep these guys in our system as long as we can, because the average age of a Premier League debut is 22, 23. So there's a gap between under 18 football and when these guys are making making the debut. So we've got to keep them, these guys all train with the first team, so Ronald knows them inside out. They're not training with me anymore, they're training with Ronald. So
I see.
They've got that exposure to the first team and training with the likes of Lukaku and Jagielka and Ross Barkley. So they're getting that exposure, but they need to play games as well. So if they're not playing games for our first team, we might send them out on loan for 6 months, then they come back, we see where they're up to, and then and it's a constant evaluation process from an individual point of view. But we certainly have to keep these young talent in our system as long as we can, because it's getting more and more difficult for these guys to break through.
Sure,
I'm just going to ask you one last cheeky question, David, while we got you on, because obviously the hot subject of last week was where's Romelu Lukaku going? Have you heard anything in the last 24 hours?
Oh, that's cruel, David. Cruel.
If you want my honest answer is no, I haven't got a clue, and I wouldn't know.
No, absolutely. That was a vicious question, David. I want to apologise.
Sorry, David. I'm still a journalist. Porky at this point is not.
It's fine, not a problem, guys.
Very, very harsh indeed. But Dave, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Congratulations on having had a great season, and I look forward to seeing you next season when I'm sure you're going to have another one.
Thanks, gents. All the best.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers, David. I don't need you to apologise on my behalf, by the way. Thank you very much. It's not exactly Woodward and Bernstein, is it?
Well,
when they were covering the old Watergate, you didn't get one of them apologising for them asking a bit of a tough question.
Yeah, but I mean, you
go a guy from Everton, you ask him about where Romelu Lukaku's going.
Uncomfortable, that one.
Well, uncomfortable for you.
Bit below the belt. You know what I mean?
I distance you from it. You'll be all right. You'll still be invited into the director's box. Don't worry about it.
Excuse me. What do you think I am? I've got a season ticket of my own.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting what Dave says. The perpetual problem of how to, I think what he was, what the point he touched on was how do you keep these boys' ambitions razor sharp when there are so few opportunities to break into the first team?
I think surely the answer to that is that you make opportunities. If you really feel that the potential is there, then you must take a chance on them. Well, I mean, apart from anything else, it would be a lot cheaper than hiring in, hired guns from Europe at the cost of sort of £300,000 a week or something. You know?
Well, Tom Davis is a great example, isn't he? Because Tom forced his way into the first team.
Yeah.
He got the opportunities that a lot of them will get sitting on the substitutes bench. Sometimes, that if you go on after 20 minutes because of an injury, you've got 3/4 of a game to try and impress, and you've had to struggle up.
You've got to be there in the shop window
and ready for it.
In order to sometimes get the chance.
That's
you
right.
might sometimes have to be a lot more patient than you would like.
Yeah.
How about this from John, who's not convinced? He says, where were Germany, Italy, France, Brazil, etc. in this under-20s World Cup? Venezuela, hardly a footballing giant.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that Italy certainly had a team in it. They were playing in the same pot as England, to be honest. I don't see Brazil. France were there. The Germans were there as well. There were a lot of other teams that you might not think.
Hang on, I'll just tell you who won this competition over the last few years. And by the way, somebody tweeted in and said they thought they heard me say that the Under-20s World Cup was every 4 years.
Yeah, you did say that.
It's every two.
Yeah,
That's
you
obvious.
did say it was every 4 years.
Well, that I was thinking of it twice in 4 years. But anyway, previous winners of this competition in recent times: France, Brazil, Argentina twice, Brazil, Argentina, Spain. I mean,
Argentina twice and then Argentina again.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, going back.
Is that 3 times then?
Well, Argentina have won it in 95, 97, 2001, 2005, 2007. I mean, they are hot.
Every 2 years it's
in this competition. Yeah, that's
amazing.
right. Yeah.
Now, give us a call, 08717 22 33 44. You could be involved with some of the players that you saw playing in this game yesterday morning. If they're at your club, why does your club not put them in the first team? 08717 22 33 44. This is talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics. Loads more coming up, of course, including a conversation about Lewis Hamilton, which we're going to have, a conversation about Rafa Nadal, which we're going to have as well.
Are we?
Yeah, I think so. And also, we'll have to mention about the guy who invented Hawaiian pizza, who passed away a couple of days ago. And if you noticed that on,
terrible shame.
On social media, what was your favourite kind of pizza?
How
about this from David? Despite the hoo-ha regarding England's World Cup win, I doubt whether the TV viewing figures top 50,000. The FA may be slapping themselves on the back, but in reality, hardly anyone is interested.
Well, I think that's a miserable
it is rather
response, rather a miserable reaction to what a group of young men who wear England shirts have done in terms of worldwide domination.
Yes.
So,
I mean, there are those who are saying
that
there are those who are saying that you, amongst many others, are now jumping on a bandwagon. Pete says the under-20 bandwagon is well and truly rolling, and Porky is clearly riding shotgun. Can he name any non-Everton players in the squad?
Of course I can.
Well, I'm sure you can.
Freddie Woodman, the goalkeeper, he had an outstanding competition, particularly that save yesterday.
Yeah.
Jake what's his
penalty,
name?
didn't
Jay Clark. He did. Jay Clark-Salter. So many footballers now have double-barrelled surnames.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Jay Clark. Well, I suppose that they, it's parentage and all that kind of stuff. And
parentage.
Well, like.
Well, that must mean that more people are giving double-barrelled names to their kids.
Well, that's right. That's what I'm saying. The
but that's unusual,
Chamberlain
isn't it?
and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's becoming more common.
For example, if you get married, right?
Yes.
Sometimes the wife will will keep her maiden name.
Yes.
And make her surname a double-barreled name.
Yes.
But the male, the husband normally doesn't do that.
No, well, that's true.
So how do the children get double-barreled names?
I don't know. I think it's all down to the individual taste, isn't it? But another one is Kyle Walker-Peters. Okay,
yeah.
He's played for Tottenham's under-21s. I mean, it's a huge pool of talent there.
I've got a text here from someone who doesn't give a name. Don't forget, Rashford could have played in that tournament.
Yes, he could have.
Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, as could Tom Davies. But anyway, look, I want people to call in and tell us what they think should happen to all these youngsters.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is, wheat and chaff. You decide to yourself, those who are at the very, very peak of their ability to get through into the Premier League, what happens to those who don't? Give us a call, please, and I'll read this number out slowly.
Yeah, go on.
I don't like to do it in a mangle-mouth fashion, okay?
Why do you have to read it out? You've been working here 20 years. Have you not remembered it yet?
No, but I know that if you impress something on somebody's brain in a slow and precise fashion, it stays there longer.
Really?
And it's 0871... Sorry? What's your problem?
Nothing.
You just shut up.
I'm not saying anything.
Thank you. 08717 223344. Give us a call, please.
Well done.
And tell us what you think
We're
about
going
all
to
these.
talk to Dennis, actually, who's a Liverpool fan. But before that, I'm going to read you this from Scott.
Okay.
He said, Porky needs to write a new book, How I Blag My Way Through Life.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
I don't know why that's come up again.
No,
but there we are. Let's talk to Dennis, who's a Liverpool fan. Hi, Dennis.
Morning, lads.
Yeah, morning.
Hi,
What would you like to say, Dennis?
First time on the radio, so go easy on me.
No problem,
Welcome.
Just a little idea. I don't know whether it works. You've got your substitutes. If you just have an extra substitute who's under 18, and you can bring them on, anytime you want, but you're still only allowed to use your allotted substitutes.
Yes.
It's not like you've got an extra one, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So that if you win and the lads are winning 3-0 or whatever, you can say, well, let's bring them on for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Introduce him that way. At least he's on the bench mixing with the lads and etc.
I mean, Dennis, are you kind of saying that if we only have 5 substitutes, one of them's got to be under 19 or something like that, or maybe?
No, what I'm saying, if you've got 5 substitutes, but if one of them is under 19, you can actually have 6, but you can still only use your allotted amount of substitutes, even though you've got a young lad extra on the bench.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So it means that you've got, say, as many. Well, maybe you could expand it. You can have as many people on the bench as you want, but you can still only use the right number.
Yes,
I like that.
Use the one you do under 18 guy, with him. If you win him 3-0, or whatever you are, you can say, well, we'll bring them on, and you can do it that way. At least you're getting them on there.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea.
A great idea.
And also, that would mean that in a position where each manager could take his pick, he could decide that the reason to play the youngster would be because he would slot into a particular role that he wanted him to play. I think that's great. Sash says this: I'd love to see England under-20s versus the senior side. It would show the difference in levels, more informative than some friendlies as well.
But what would that prove? I mean, what would that do?
Well, I don't know what it would prove, but I mean, I think his point is it'd be more useful than some friendlies, and I think that's right.
Well,
I mean, the friendly against France, for example.
Yes.
I mean, it's not really going to show much for Pep Southgate, is it? What's he going to learn from that?
No, I agree. It's not something that I'm going to be rushing home to turn the telly on for. But
really?
I see what you mean here. Do you remember in years ago at the start of the season, instead of playing all these friendlies, they used to actually play one game, and it was called the Possibles against the Probables.
Yeah.
And
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember it very well indeed.
When did they play that then? What, England?
No, Chester, when I was about 6. And
Chester?
and I used to go and watch the pre-season games
Well,
at
how would I
Chester.
have known about that?
Well, but all the lower league clubs did it. It was standard.
All right.
Because, I mean, they couldn't even afford a bus to go and play a friendly at Tranmere or something like that.
Right.
They were restored austere times.
If you're a probable for Chester, how bad do you have to be?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So they used to play the possibles against the probables, and then that would be a bit like when you see an England training squad and you know exactly what the team's going to be tomorrow because those are guys are wearing the bibs and those guys aren't. You know what I mean? And that sort of thing.
What are you talking about?
Well, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Paul is not very happy. He says that we should be giving more plaudits to these young guys. He says it's disgraceful. If the USA had won the Cup, they'd be meeting Trump this morning. I feel the FA have missed a massive opportunity.
Yeah, well, you say that.
I mean, I suppose you could say to them, would you like to go and see the Prime Minister? They might have turned it down on the grounds that she's a bit of a dead woman walking, as George Osborne describes her.
Well, I mean, that's
I don't fancy going to Downing Street.
That's getting into a different political arena. But there's one here from a chap who says, right, I'll have a 10k charity bet with Porky that not one player who played yesterday plays one game in Russia 2018.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get into a wild bet like that, but I understand the speculation that you're talking about. And what I would say is that it's a pretty safe bet, that, because if somebody's going to get into the 2018 Russian squad, right, they've only got half a dozen games to do it, haven't they, now, and less than a season. And so if you looked at them, you'd have to say, well, maybe the goal scorer, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, maybe John Joe Kenny, because I think he got some nominations as the player of the tournament. You've got to definitely look at, all the lads who played yesterday, Carl Walker-Peters, Jake Clark-Slater, but it'll be very, very hard for them to break into the senior squad. A lot of them will probably, play in the under-21 games, I would imagine. But it would be phenomenal if any of them went through. None of them are regular Premier League players, and therefore I think it's almost impossible that any of them will get in.
But surely my point about the, Gareth Southgate, for example, is saying that the advent of St George's Park and the creation of a centre for excellence for English football is the reason why these kids are doing so well. I don't see any evidence of that.
I don't see any evidence of that. You're absolutely right, because St George's Park is not well liked by the football community. For some reasons. Yeah. It's remote.
Well, it's not remote from everywhere. It's only remote as far as people who live in London are concerned.
No, I think the nearest motorway is 25 minutes away. I mean, that's what I mean by remote. And therefore, you get cabin fever type feelings and that kind of stuff. It has been reported back to me. I've never actually been there, but that's the feeling that some people have in the game. But you're absolutely right.
Well, why don't they build a motorway to take you there?
That's a really ridiculous suggestion.
Why?
Because it would probably cost about 60 million quid. Who's going to pay for it?
Well, you're telling me the FA haven't got any money?
We haven't got 60 million quid. They're
maybe
they
should have thought of that when they've decided where they were going to locate themselves.
The FA look after football. They do not look after the motorway network in this country.
I understand that.
Most stupid and ridiculous suggestion I've heard.
You're the one who I believe was the person who first came up with the idea of private motorways. Yeah, so actually, there's nothing wrong with private motorways.
Private motorways are a good thing.
Yeah, but you don't want the FA to have one.
I'm not saying they don't have one. The point is that the private motorway...
I've never met anybody that changes their mind so often as you.
Hang on, just hear me out. The private motorway that goes through the Midlands, right, which is called... what's it called?
It's the M6 toll.
The M6 toll, that's right.
It's hard to remember that name.
That makes an awful lot of money because a lot of people use it. Frustrated motorists like me say, right, £3.60 to get on the toll, no problem.
Yeah.
And whiz, you're on it.
Man of the people.
And it's true, absolutely. How many people would use a motorway to a training complex which is used about 4 times a year?
Well, I mean, if Sam Allardyce...
it would be so expensive to build and you wouldn't get any money back.
That's not true. If Sam Allardyce thought that it was a good place to base himself, I mean, unfortunately he didn't stay in the job for very long, but if he was still the England manager, he was going to make that a massive hub of football in this country. Yeah. He was going to stay in an office inside St George's Park.
But nobody would go there except the people who work there. You wouldn't have thousands of people using their own.
Did you not see, by the way, old Pep Southgate calling out the entire backroom staff of the England setup?
Some of them were even carrying computers.
No, but it's a cast of thousands.
Yeah, some of them carrying computers and laptops and things. Get out and applaud to the crowd and all that. But also...
Why was he doing that, by the way?
Well, he wants to be a popular, manager. And I have to say, his reaction when England scored their goals, all this punch in the air, leaping up and down, double-fisted, salute to his players and arm around Harry Kane, his new skipper and all that kind of stuff. That's all very emotive and some would say, endearing and shows his enthusiasm for all that. But I think he stepped over the mark a little bit.
It all looks a bit fake to me.
Well, it looks like, you must know how enthusiastic I am about my job, so I do this type thing. But also, did you notice that he, from the touchline, he gestured to the ref to book a player who would have got sent off?
He did the old Roberto Mancini red card scenario, didn't
he? He did.
Which people used to get really upset about with Mancini.
A load of fans after the game would get onto social media and accuse him of waving an imaginary yellow card in an attempt to get Scott Brown sent off.
Exactly.
And if a player did that on the pitch, it's now a bookable offence.
Mind you, people do that a lot with Scott Brown because he does put in some quite hefty tackles, doesn't he?
That's right.
But I mean, very bizarre performance. We still haven't really dissected that. But I mean, apart from Joe Hart making those 2 blunders and those 2 very good free kicks going in from Lee Griffiths.
Yes.
I mean, England should be beating Scotland. I mean, people were talking about before the game friends of mine up there saying this is going to be an embarrassing result for Scotland.
Yeah.
And we know that Scotland quite often play better than they can ever be expected to play when they're up against it.
Yeah.
But England should never have had a draw with Scotland. It's ludicrous, isn't it?
It was nearly Scotland's best result for decades, I'm telling you. And as actually, I really took to Gordon after the game because he said, I've probably witnessed two of the greatest ever free kick goals.
Yeah.
Two of the greatest Scotland goals.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest Scotland performances.
Yes, he can't doubt any of that.
And at the end of the day, total frustration.
Yeah.
Because you see the way that he threw something to the ground after the Harry
Well,
Kane
because it was a
equaliser.
hopeless goal to have given away. As we said, as everybody said.
89 minutes when they had a 2-1 lead.
Yeah, and all they had to do when they brought the ball out from the corner was go left.
Yeah.
And they went right.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk to Ben, who's a Man United fan. He wants to talk about what players should do from the youth teams. Ben, very good morning to you.
Good morning to the two mates. Good morning.
Yeah,
good morning, mate.
What would you like to say, Ben?
Don't quote me, but I think in '66, right, that two of the England players, right, in the final made the debuts, right, that year in '66. I'm sure Alan Ball did, and I'm sure Roger Hunt did. I'm not quite sure on that, but so it is possible.
What you mean? They played for England for the first time that year.
That year, yeah.
Yeah, they did, Ben, but they were established, players in the first division. Alan Ball was a star at Blackpool. Jeff Hurst was a star at West Ham. None of these lads are first-time choices for their clubs.
Yeah, good point. But I think it's possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it can be done. Let's talk to who's this? Alan, I think. He's also a Man United fan.
Yes.
Hello, Alan.
Oh, Mike. First of all, a question, please.
Yes.
Do you know the name of Everton's academy training ground?
Yes.
What is it?
Finch Farm.
Well done.
So sorry. What's the point? What's the point to that question? Why are you wasting my time?
Do you know the name of talkSPORT's academy training ground?
Not wasting your time.
Right.
Because you talk so much about Everton and you know very little about it. So that was what I was trying to establish.
Okay. Would you like to ask me some more Everton questions then, and then we can have an Everton
Porky
quiz?
is on Friday, Alan.
Yeah, exactly.
For heaven's sake.
Have you got a point to make, Alan, or are you just an empty-headed rattler?
Yes.
Go on then.
Go on.
Why don't England, the Premier League, make it that you should have two young England players, under 18s, under 20s, playing in their team? Because there's that many foreign players coming to this country. That if they were given a chance to play on a weekly basis, surely you could prove whether or not they're good enough. Because,
but club managers...
Everybody goes on in it.
Yeah, but the problem is then, mate, the club managers would be at a disadvantage to the rest of Europe, having to play players they perceive to be not their maximally best player, if you see what I mean.
It's true. Alan, thank you very much for your call. We've got to move on because it's very, very late, I'm afraid. But we'll take more of your calls as well, of course. 08717 2233 44. We'll develop Alan's point as well. This is talkSPORT.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
For some reason, all I can see is that scene from Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah, right, okay.
Of the guys running about dressed up as Batman and Robin.
I thought it was the greatest show on telly when I was a kid.
Batman, it was pretty good,
It was utterly brilliant. I mean, the way that they managed to present a completely different society, Gotham City, in which they put this bat light up in the air, put up the bat beam, and Batman would see it.
Yeah.
And what used to astonish me was even as a kid of 6...
Was it the bat signal?
The bat signal, that's it. Even as a kid of 6, I could work out that actually Batman and the billionaire businessman, Bruce, whatever his name was. Bruce Wayne, that's right, who lived in this huge house, looked very similar to each other. And I think
you mean the mask didn't put you off knowing who he was? Exactly.
I think I would have figured out who Batman was. But it's a shame, isn't it, that we're now reporting on the death of Batman, the original Batman, Adam West. He was 88, so he had a great run. And a fantastic story. I just loved it. I've seen a load of famous Batman quotes this morning, but none of them are as impressive as the one which I thought was the best. And they managed to say these things so earnestly, so straight-facedly, that you had to believe them yourself.
But it was very clever showing in many ways.
It was very, very clever.
It was written in a way that it would appeal not only to the kids who were watching it, but to their parents as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the quote I'm talking about is that they get cornered by a gang of the Joker's henchmen, who've all got submachine guns.
Who were always hopeless as well.
Yeah, they were, and there's about 10 of them. Yeah. And so they start firing at them for about 30 seconds, and all that.
Something like that.
And then it stops, and then Robin says, they've stopped shooting, Batman. And Batman says, yeah, it's okay, Robin, they've run out of bullets.
Right.
And Robin says, how do you know, Batman? He says, I counted them. And everybody took that, at face value, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
But
he had quite a colourful private life, it would seem.
Well,
Adam West.
Well, the thing is, there's two sides to this, before Batman and after Batman, okay? Yeah. While he was Batman, he said, the costumes seem to be designed to allure women. He says, if you look at our show, this is a family show, by the way, so please take this in good spirit. If you look at our show, you'll see that we always stood with our legs open and our fists on our hips and our bat bulges forward, which had a profound effect on women, right? But that seemed to be okay while it was going on. When he left Batman, he found himself so stereotyped in the role, nobody would give him another job to do anything
else. Well, I don't remember seeing him in much else. Really,
no, he then took to the bladderation trail because he found it a little difficult to get on with life whilst he was Batman, but there were no Batman shows on.
Yeah. And Batman, of course, now has become this massive sort of, cinema franchise, if you like, and all sorts of people have played Batman, and some of the roles have been slightly more sort of humorous, some of the roles have been slightly darker.
I thought some of them were deadly dull, and, over...
I like George Clooney was a good Batman,
I thought Clooney was a good Batman. I didn't like Val Kilmer much. Was
Not
he
particularly.
Batman?
He was Batman for a while, right, Heath Ledger, of course, was the famous Joker in that very dark Batman film.
What they did with it, and I think a bit of this happened to the Bond films as well, is they tried to over-scientificate it, if you see what I mean. You know what I mean?
What, make it a bit too clever for its own good?
A bit too clever for its own good, a bit too many gadgets,
Well, the thing that I used to love when I was watching the original Batman was when the fight started.
Yes, that's right.
Because then there'd be, I always remember the one that was on top of the submarine.
Yeah.
And as everybody got punched, and POW would be, the letters would come spraying out the TV.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I thought was an incredible kind of, technological breakthrough.
It was silent commentary.
It was.
It was brilliant silent commentary.
Yeah, it was. And you could tell, and the fights were so bad that you could tell that they weren't actually hitting each other.
Yes.
But meanwhile, they were all falling about. It was very clever.
That's right. I mean, talking about the womanising,
and what about Burt Ward, who was Robin?
I was about to say, now, he died a few years ago, right? And I was on a newspaper when he died, so we did a spread in the middle. We got everybody to talk about him. And in fact, we had enough evidence, because he was smaller, to be able to put a headline on the top which said, Throbbing Robin.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was an inveterate womaniser.
Oh, was he?
An inveterate womaniser, yeah. He was
very classy headline.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. He was chasing women all around the set and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And
it's a bit harsh, this one here. Look, from Russ, he says, Porky is a kid of 6. I didn't realise Batman was being screened in the 1940s.
Yeah, it's very harsh, isn't it? Yeah. It's a bit unkind. But the effect it had was it created a culture, didn't it? I mean, did you, for instance, have a Batman T-shirt?
I don't know that I had a Batman T-shirt, but I definitely had a Batman outfit.
A Batman outfit?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see you in a Batman outfit.
I had a Batman outfit.
That would crack me up.
Well, I was about 7, though.
Yeah, well,
7 or 8 or something.
I never had any Batman stuff.
No Batman memorabilia?
No, when I was a kid. I think I was more into James Bond, you know. I was a member of the James...
What, so you did a jacket?
No. I had a model of James Bond's car with the ejector seat and all that kind of stuff.
I had one of those, yeah.
And I was a member of the James Bond Spy Club and all that kind of stuff, you know. Something like that.
Well, you wouldn't have lasted long in that, would you? You can't keep a secret.
Listen, you don't know some of my secrets. And
I think I know all of them, actually.
But when I became a sort of groovy teenager, around about 16 or 17,
groovy.
Yeah, I don't know why, but people started wearing, like, Batman T-shirts.
Are you
know
sure
what I mean?
Burt Ward's dead, by the way?
I think he is, isn't he?
People are telling us that he's not.
Really?
So you've killed somebody else off, who is in fact still with us.
Well, he must have written a book then, or retired or something, because nobody ever came back to us.
Because it's easy to confuse somebody who's written a book with somebody who's dead.
Well, well, maybe he's not, but I mean, there don't seem to be too many tributes here from Burt Ward to Adam West, do
Well, maybe they fell out, like Simon and Garfunkel.
Well, maybe they did, yeah.
Very possible.
Well, listen, Burt, if you're out there and you're listening and you're not dead, then, get into the fire up the Batmobile.
Fire up the Batmobile and give us a shout. Yeah, Burt Ward is definitely still alive, says Matt.
Okay, good for Burt. I like Burt. He was good. He was good. He was a good Robin.
He certainly was a good Robin.
Yeah.
Now, we are the two mics on talkSPORT with Wicks, of course. Right now, there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care. Just thought I'd tell you that. And also, I've got a tweet here for you from Andy, who's helping us out with double-barrelled names. He says, I think you'll find the reason there are more double-barrelled names is that less parents are married.
Oh, yeah, could be.
Well, that still doesn't make any sense, though, because the only reason you have two names, I would have said, because most people are named on their birth certificate after the surname of the father.
Yes, right, okay.
It doesn't matter whether you're married or not.
Right, okay.
Anyway, and Danny says, just a quick one. My parents were on holiday in Torquay, and did you know that the Fawlty Towers Hotel has been demolished for a block of flats?
Yes, I did know that. I read that somewhere, yeah.
Really?
That's a great shame. But that wasn't the real hotel. That's the one that inspired it, wasn't it? Oh, no, I suppose that's where they did the outside shots. That's
outside shots,
all the inside shots, of course, were done
I believe the actual original inspiration for Fawlty Towers was not actually in Torquay at all.
No.
It was a place that the Monty Python lot stayed in when they were filming something.
That's right.
Movies.
It was John Cleese said, God, that's the most irascible, hotel owner I've ever met in my life.
Right,
and then started thinking about it. Yeah.
And then suddenly they wrote about it. But it wasn't in Torquay. I can't remember exactly where it was. I'm sure somebody will remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are the two mics. This is talkSPORT. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the two mics on talkSPORT. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Joe Hart, because he's a guy who can't seem to find himself a position as a goalkeeper in the Premier League. He's come back from Italy. He had a pretty bad game against Scotland up at Hampden. He's being blamed for letting both of those goals in because they were pretty good free kicks, but he should have got a bit closer to them, shouldn't he? We'll be trying to help out and improve his image for him. 08717 22 3344. We'll also be issuing a massive apology to Burt Ward, who's apparently alive and well and has been telling everyone what a great guy Adam West was. We've got loads of tweets from you on that one as well. You can tweet us, of course, at the two mics, at Mike Parry 8 and at IROMG. You're listening to the two mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. This is talkSPORT, and I've got a great piece here saying Adam West was an amazing talent, says Batman co-star Burt Ward.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, just a slight technical error there. Burt Ward, of course, is alive and well and kicking and has been heard of over the last couple of days.
So he's 71.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it doesn't seem that old, that, to me, considering... Well, he was 20, actually, when... the show started in the 60s, so that probably makes a bit of sense.
In fact, it's a great picture here from 2014 when they both Burt Ward, Adam West, and Julie Newmar, who played Catwoman, who was great in that series, by the way, all appeared on stage at the same time.
They absolutely did, And Burt Ward tells about being introduced into a lot of debauchery when he worked on the set of Batman.
Yeah.
And as I say, Adam West took to a bit of heavy drinking to the extent where until his death was banned for life from Aspen, Colorado.
Oh, was he?
Because of several incidents involving excessive imbibing.
Oh, really? Well, Gabriel says Adam West was on Family Guy for years and constantly sent himself out. Brilliantly self-aware and very droll. That's, of course, a cartoon. Yes. So he played him. He was a cartoon of himself.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, voicing over a cartoon.
Yes.
But anyway, listen, Joe Hart. Now then, poor lad Joe Hart, a man with immense talent and regarded as one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world just sort of 18 months ago. And he says, I'm in limbo. I've had no offers to move elsewhere. I'm still with Manchester City. He's 30 years of age.
Right.
He spent last season on loan with Torino. Due to return to training next month with City, even though they've signed the Brazilian keeper Ederson.
Yes.
And he won't be playing, apparently, in tomorrow's England game against France. He's being, quotes, arrested.
Oh, is he?
Although you've just mentioned the 2 free kicks, which some say he maybe could have done better at.
Well, there were some who were saying, these were great free kicks. Joe Hart was not to blame.
Yeah.
But the problem with Joe Hart, and I was saying this earlier, is that you have this vision of Joe Hart. In fact, my son and I, whenever we watch Joe Hart play, wait for the moment where you see Joe Hart diving haplessly for the ball.
That's right.
And missing it as it goes into the goal.
Yeah.
It happens in almost every England game they play.
Well, he's only ever conceded free kicks from 4 players.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, twice in 2 games now.
Well, there was the Gareth Bale, wasn't there?
The Gareth Bale was one, but I can't remember which team it was now. It was something like Serbia or something like that. Uh-huh. Somebody scored against him twice as well from free kicks. Okay. And yesterday twice, and then two other Gareth Bale one there.
But I mean, what I'm saying is it's not just free kicks. I mean, there's always a picture of Joe Hart diving very theatrically and very athletically, actually, for a ball, because his body's at full stretch, but he's not reaching the ball.
He's not reaching the ball, you're right.
You know, and you see a lot of other goalkeepers, if they're reaching that far, are stopping the ball.
Tipping the ball around the post or something.
That's a very strange thing. I don't know where he went wrong.
Well, he goes on to say, after the game, I've got nothing at the moment. My situation now is interesting, and patience is going to be the key. I'm lucky I've got this great distraction of being involved with my country at the moment. When this is finished, then we'll have to see. I'd love to be withholding information about my future, but I don't have information to withhold.
Is part of his problem that he is a very, very expensive player, and that as long as he's got sort of ties with Manchester City, that his money that he gets from whichever club he goes to has to be the same?
Well, that may be the case. I mean, that's between him and his agent, but I think the main problem he's got is that Pep Guardiola has showed so little confidence in him, and Pep is still regarded as one of the world's great coaches. Right. I think anybody who's going to buy him is going to say, well, why doesn't Pep want him?
Yeah, he must know something, because quite often in these cases as well, the questions start being asked about, well, is it something off the field? Is it something about his attitude? Is it nothing to do with the way that he plays? Maybe it's something to do with the fact that Pep doesn't want him around.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's true, but that can sometimes be the doubt that gets put into people's minds.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones as well, because we've been taking a lot of calls this morning on the whole England winning the World Cup scenario. 08717 223344. Just before we talk to Tom, who's a Reading fan, a couple of this shows you the perils of social media, right?
Yeah,
Ross says the Fawlty Towers Hotel was based on one in Weston-super-Mare.
Ah, thank you.
But Hank says the Fawlty Towers Hotel was in Buckinghamshire,
right?
Nowhere near Torquay, but it has been demolished. So I don't know whether it's Buckinghamshire or Weston-super-Mare.
Yes.
It may not be either of those places.
But it's probably not Torquay.
Somebody else suggested maybe they stayed at the Adelphi.
No, they could have stayed at the Adelphi, mate. It would have been much worse.
Exactly. Let's talk to Tom, who's a Reading fan in Bristol. Hi, Tom.
How you doing, all right?
Yeah, very well.
Pretty good, Tom.
What do you want to say about the cup competitions?
It was just going back to what some guy said earlier. He said making it a necessity for English teams to have under-20s, under-21s, under-18 English players in the team. I think from a European perspective, it's not a great idea, because obviously we need to put our strongest teams out to compete in Europe. But what if we were to keep it local and say, you know, for FA Cup games or EFL Cup games, you have to have a minimum number of under-21s or under-20s players in your squads?
But wouldn't that unfairly unbalance the squads, Tom, in the sense that, you know, the duty of a club manager at every turn is to put onto the field his 11 best players or combination of 11 best players. And if he's being, you know, gerrymandered by a law which insists you inject players into your team, but not necessarily because of their talent or their skill, that's going to unbalance the whole thing, isn't it?
What if it was just to be, let's say, just Premier League? If you only had the Premier League, so every Premier League team has to have 2 English players. I know what you're saying about having to put the best teams out, but I think these clubs are English clubs. So for us to improve our national team, we need to grow English youth, and the only way we're going to do that is to have our English players playing regular football.
That's a bit of a naive attitude, I'm afraid, because club managers don't care about what they have to do for the national team.
I think you'd also run into trouble with your club manager and various contracts and things. Because imagine coming to your club manager at the end of the season and saying, I'm afraid your performances have been below par and we're now going to fire you and release you from your contract. And he'll turn around and say, probably the company of a lawyer, and say, well, you made me play players that I would never have chosen.
That's right.
Because there's this ridiculous rule in place which says that I have to play these 2 kids that I would never have in my team, and that's why we didn't do as well as we should have done.
That's right.
So you can't fire me.
That's
See what I mean?
Yeah, it's a massive game of politics, though.
Yeah.
It's an endless conversation that could go on forever and ever and ever.
Right.
But we need to sit down as a nation and go, right, if we want to improve our team from a national perspective, something needs to happen, because otherwise these politics around contracts and negotiations will go on forever and ever and ever. Something needs to be done.
Exactly right, because otherwise we'll all be sitting here in 10 years' time going, why haven't we got any decent young players?
Yeah, and we'll go, do you remember that team back in 2017 that won the World Cup? Where have all those players gone?
Well, I mean, I suspect
now, whilst we've got the squad,
but I suspect what it will be is exactly the same as what people would say now about the England under-20 team that finished third in the 1993 World Cup, which can only really name Nick Barmby, David Unsworth maybe, and Steve Watson possibly, as players that actually made it through that.
Yes.
Fascinating stuff. Lots more to come. We've got loads more of your calls to take as well. Thank you, Tom. 08717 22 3344. Lots more to come. Mark Bukowski's going to help us, though, coming up. He's a PR guru. He might be able to help us out with somewhere for Joe Hart to go.
We need a guru or two.
We do need a guru or two. Well said. This is talkSPORT.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
This is talkSPORT. We are the two mics. Got a couple of great ones here. Grant says, did you know that Burt Ward had to turn down a role in the film The Graduate, which went to Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah, apparently he was the lead.
Did you know that?
But I had heard about that, they wouldn't release him from his Batman contract, and so he never actually got round to taking up the part.
That's right, Mark says, Porky was first to announce the death of Princess Diana. Hardly a surprise. He did well not to announce it in the first half of the 1990s as well.
No, that's a bit harsh. I mean, that truly was an historic moment of journalistic brilliance.
No, it was. But given that you're quite good at killing people off prematurely, is
absolutely.
What I'm saying,
Now then, remember, you are, of course, listening to the two mics. We are on talkSPORT and we are with Wix. Now, right now, there's a 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care.
Yes. Now, a lot of people making rather unfortunate jokes about Joe Hart and his shampoo.
Yeah, that's
Scott
terrible.
says maybe Hart needs to change the shampoo. That Head and Shoulders seems to be getting in his eyes, blurring his vision when he plays. Hashtag ka-ching. Now, let's talk to Mark Bukowski, though, because he's a PR guru, a man that can replenish anybody's image if he is asked to do so.
Yes.
We're going to ask him now what he would do to get Joe Hart a job. Mark, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Greetings, boys.
Yeah. Now,
thanks, Mark.
Joe Hart, incredibly, who is the number one goalkeeper for England, we think, still
seems
at
to
this
be
very moment in
unemployable.
time, it seems to be unemployable in the Premier League. What can you do to fix his image?
The problem is, I mean, I thought he got treated incredibly badly by Man City, but obviously Guardiola didn't think much of him. We've got a hell of a history, haven't we, with keepers. I mean, I grew up with Shilton and Clements and whatever, but somehow we just have more calamities, with keepers these days. So his main problem was that he ended up sort of playing his season miles away from the Premier League in Italy. So he's out of sight and out of mind. The problem with keepers is that the fact that one bad mistake or one game or one slip up, and you're defined by that. And unfortunately, that's all we've seen on international duty or whatever. He hasn't been strong or stable. And maybe we should take some.
I thought that was last week, strong and stable. This week's something else.
He's missing a few cliches. Everything. It's been a bunch of calamities. But the main fact is that if he's not going to be taken on in this country, and there was a great interview that he did, very transparent interview he did for the BBC about his time actually playing in Turin, and it was very honest. And I think that. He handled himself incredibly well, very articulate, very heartfelt, and supposedly the mandarins at Man City didn't like it at all. Although he navigated around, being bitter towards Guardiola. So we've got to get him back in play, really. If he is going to play the next season in Italy, then somehow he's got to sort of channel back what he's doing in Italy, because I believe in Italy they like him. He's become a bit of a character in Italy, and somehow we've got to try to channel that back so that he's not just ignored and out of sight and out of mind.
Yeah, but
that would be the first part.
Okay, I totally accept that. Thank you. But the other thing that I think must be hurting him is if one of the world's leading coaches, Pep Guardiola, didn't just, decide he didn't fancy him. He made it absolutely clear from the start he was not part of his plans. Then presumably any other manager taking him on would say, well, if Pep doesn't think he's any good, what can we think about him? And what is it that we don't know about him that's put Pep off him? I mean, that is part of the image problem, isn't it? That people have to talk you up, not talk you down.
Well, frankly, the counter spin to that, Pep Guardiola's sort of choice of goalkeepers has been hardly stellar, has it?
No, they haven't.
I think, if you're looking back at, his belief in the keepers he took to replace Hart, I mean, they were walking calamities. So he might know his way around it, but to a certain extent, he probably doesn't know about keepers in the UK. So I'd certainly spin that back, but they're surely He didn't acquit himself well on Saturday, that's for sure.
No, he didn't.
And I guess the problem with keepers as well is that it's a very lonely place to be. And once you've got it inside your head, and I would start back with him of getting his head straight and actually trying to be a lot more confident the way he projects himself, because you've got to go on an aggressive PR campaign now. And I'm sure his agents are looking at that, because if you're not, then it's gonna be only one way, and that is sort of into oblivion.
So you'd want to steer him away from any sort of endorsements of anything else on TV, notwithstanding whatever shampoo scenarios he's still got left. But obviously, when Gareth Southgate took them all down to the Marines training camp, that didn't work out for Joe.
It didn't work out for him at all. No, I mean, the problem is, are you going to get, a top quality endorsement campaign at the moment? You're probably thinking about Southgate missing that famous penalty in the shootout, ended up, getting involved with the Jokey campaign. I think it was for Pizza Hut at the time, all those years ago. So I think you need the internet behind you. You need to get rid of some of these really unfortunate memes. And if you're looking at Twitter every morning around Joe Hart, it isn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant over the weekend. It was more jokey than nasty. He certainly wasn't getting trolled. But you've got to work up from the bottom, and I think trying to put some sense of humour into it. But at the end of the day, as a player, you've got to be playing well.
That's right.
Good.
Yeah, but it's the ultimate
you can
kind
do
of
as much spin as you want.
Yeah.
But are you good at what you do?
Well, surely the ultimate insult on social media is that people have stopped trolling you; they're just making fun of you, just laughing at you. I mean, that's the worst thing of all, isn't it?
That's not much fun.
Both aren't nice.
Now, Mark,
no, I can attest to
the
that.
other thing is, sometimes you can get back on a popular wave of sentiment from the public. You know what I mean? If there's a huge, Joe Hart's a great guy and we all love Joe Hart, that can fix people's minds and can change people's minds. The problem is, we're talking here about a multi-millionaire footballer who's probably earning, £100,000 a week minimum, and there isn't much public sympathy for people in that sort of position, is there?
No, there's not. But I mean, I think that goes with the territory of football generally.
Yeah.
I think you start by looking at actually getting, a club supporters behind you. There's nothing more dedicated and sort of, dexterous actually on social media than a good club supporters. And if they love you and if you work with them, that's a start. That's your foundation. And even if it's, unfortunately, if you're in Italy, that's more difficult to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, clearly he wants to come home, and clearly from the indication is that he was happy to see out his season in Italy. But I do feel sorry for him. I do feel sorry for goalkeepers, and I do for out players really, because we've seen a lot of keepers in this country just show so much promise, and yet very quickly their careers end.
Yeah, I see he's not playing tomorrow against France for England. I mean, that could be another terrible nail in the coffin.
He might not come back from that. That's what happened to Wayne Rooney, wasn't it? I mean, Wayne Rooney's another player, Mark, who's in a similar situation, but perhaps not quite as desperate.
Listen, Wayne Rooney is more interesting because I think there's not enough thought gone into thinking about his way out. Every footballer, sooner or later their skill set decline, and there's been no management of decline. I mean, footballers don't think, because they want to play to the last, but they're not thinking about what their next career should be. And most people either think of as a career in media or back into the game in a coaching position. Yeah. But I mean, if Wayne Rooney does go to China, there's a huge opportunity there to do something new and different around his comms. But it feels like he's hanging on, and that's the worst place to be.
Yeah, it is. I mean, some say now he'll have to stay at United for another year just to really pick up the $300,000 a week that's in his contract for the last year of it. But I mean, that then is basically...
It's soulless, isn't it?
It's completely soulless because he knows he's not a first-team choice. And, I don't understand how you can be Wayne Rooney, captain of Manchester United and captain of England and record goal scorer everywhere you've been 1 minute, and then you're in the shadows the next. I would leave anyway. You don't need the money. I would go. What about you?
I totally agree, but I think there's obviously something else going on. in the back there. And we've seen other players. John Terry this season did a great job of actually sort of supporting the team and being a force in the background. And he didn't get so many games. But I think for Rooney needs him. All players need to play. They need to be wanted. They need to be stars. They need all that adoration. Yeah. And this is the problem. Footballing careers are actually quite brief. Yeah, they make
very brief.
More money than most can even dream of. But there's not enough clever thinking about what is your entire career. What do you do next?
That's right.
And there's only so many jobs you can get in the media, and there's only so many great jobs you can get in football.
That's true.
And
That's true.
And Beckham is another example of somebody who could have been a greater politician in sports, like a Frank Beckenbauer, and never thought that through, really. So, and then ended up getting all the negative publicity he did over not getting his goal.
That's right.
So, not many footballers actually manage, or great footballers manage, in this modern age, in my estimation, a way out and still to be wanted and adored.
Yeah, quite. We were going to ask you how to rehabilitate Theresa May, who's obviously not looking for a way out, but I don't think we've got enough time for that now, Mark. But we will ask you about that coming soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
You can smell it from here. The decaying flesh. You can say it.
Yeah, you really can. Shocking state of affairs.
How cruel.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Mark Bukowski there.
Woman at the Prime Minister, next minute being talked about as decaying flesh by a top PR guru.
That's what's going on. We'll be talking to Peter Oborn, who's a top columnist, about that coming up in a little while.
We will.
Because it is an absolute shambles over in Downing Street. You're thinking of putting Porky in charge. Even he can do a better job.
What?
This is talkSPORT. Couple of quick announcements for you, Porky.
Yeah.
Somebody called Double says this. Pat Jennings, OBE, is 72 today. Surely worth a tip of the old cap. Since we were talking about goalkeepers, I would say so.
I noticed that. And
you met him not long ago, didn't you?
Met him long ago at Spurs, at the Everton-Spurs game, and he was an absolute gentleman, a very, very decent...
And the giant hands
and
are true,
giant hands. I took a picture of Pat and me, and his hands are my hands, but... lovely guy. Indeed. And happy birthday.
Jorge says, listening live in Virginia Beach, and can I get a birthday shout out for my son Gabriel, who's 11 today? Big fan of Porky, it says.
Really? Well, Gabriel, 11 years of age.
Well, he's obviously
today.
Not being brought up very well, is he?
He's been brought up brilliantly well.
He's a big fan of yours.
He's been brought up brilliantly well to believe in Porkyism as a philosophy.
Is that like Baggism?
It's like Baggism, yeah. And what was this chap's name again? Gabriel.
Jorge. Oh, Gabriel is the boy's name, I think.
Gabriel, yeah. Well, Gabriel, 11 years old today. Have a great birthday and have a great life, my boy, and have a fun day today.
A great life. Lee in Ashford says, I'd have Porky as Prime Minister. He claims to know everything, so it'd be a good choice.
Well, we were just saying, weren't we, earlier, that the country's now in a state of limbo because of the political situation.
Yes.
And I said to you, I'm feeling quite comfortable, actually, because as long as politicians can't do anything, they can't mess anything up.
Well, they can't tax
you
anymore than
maybe
they
the
work,
state of inertia is perhaps going to be good for us.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for having no government at all.
Yeah, I agree.
In fact, whenever they do have a period of having no government, everything seems to go very smoothly.
Very smoothly indeed.
Now did you see that story yesterday about the guy who was rescued in the Atlantic?
Unbelievable.
A 73-year-old sailor. Now, do you know this guy was a lone yachtsman, right? But he's done it something like 19 or 20 times he's crossed the Atlantic.
8 of those single-handedly, and the rest of the time with a crewmate.
Because you know how you normally have a go whenever anybody is in this sort of situation. You go, bloody ridiculous that anybody should actually have to be rescued, and why should it be, down to us to rescue people? How much money is it going to cost and all of that? But actually, it's a rather sweet story, isn't it?
It's a sweet story because this guy is in an official race, so it's not like he's just set out like, Captain Calamity.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to sail the Atlantic.
Going across the Atlantic.
His yacht was one of several badly damaged while taking part in a race for solo or two-person cruise from Portsmouth to Newport, Rhode Island.
Yes.
Where you and I once went to a wedding.
You always say that whenever you say Rhode Island.
Well, it's the smallest state in the Union.
Yeah,
not everybody's been there.
Well, I've been to Rhode Island many times, not just for that one time.
Well, that's because you've got family connections up that way.
Well, it's not, actually.
Anyway, his 36-hour ordeal began in the early hours of Friday when his yacht was knocked onto its side in 80-mile-an-hour winds. That's not very pleasant, believe me.
Have you been in an 80-mile-an-hour wind?
No, but I'm going to tell you a story in a minute about me being at the centre of a rescue mission over the weekend as well, at sea. Yes, I was, yeah.
Well, where were you? Were you down in Gosport then?
Well, hang on, I'll tell you. Just to finish the story of this brave man, the mast of the Tamarind went underwater and a window smashed, causing water to pour into the cabin. Mr. Wheatley from Newton Ferrers, near Plymouth.
He's an ex-Marine, I think.
Oh, well, that's right. Good seafaring territory.
What? Talking like a pirate.
Well, because Plymouth, Plymouth Hole and Sir Francis Drake and all that.
Get on with it.
He lost all power and spent several hours pumping out the water by hand. He plugged the window with cushions, but water kept seeping in.
Yeah, well,
I
could have told him that wouldn't work.
Exactly.
I mean, what sort of a seaman is he?
Oh, I've got a hole in my boat. Where's the cushion?
I'll put a cushion up there, that'll be fine.
Anyway, the
40-foot waves coming over.
The amazing thing about it is that his emergency beacon had been automatically activated.
Yeah.
Canadian Coast Guard began to coordinate a rescue from a Hercules aircraft. People do try very hard to help people at sea, don't they? It's amazing.
They do. Well, you have to, because it's life and death, basically.
Of course it is. Mr. Wheatley said he considered trying to sail 1,500 miles back to England, but would have had no means of communication. Anyway, what happens is a cargo ship initially diverted to his aid, but the captain said he had no viable plan to get him on board. I thought he was going to lower a rope, but I couldn't have climbed it when I was 26 in those huge seas, let alone 73.
I think you're going to tell me a story about your weekend.
Well, hang on. So anyway...
I'm getting bored with this now.
No, the QM2, the Queen Mary II, right, which is one of the world's great ocean-going liners...
That's the successor to the QE2, right?
It is to the successor to the QE2, which I went across the Atlantic in, was fairly near, and he said, any chance of a lift? The boat lowered a rescue boat alongside with a crew of 3, jumped across and got onto the boat, and he was winched up on the ship. He's now been spending time for free by the owners of the ship. I think it's a Cunard ship, isn't it?
It would be, I would imagine.
In a luxury cabin, and he now says, I used to have disdain for people who steam past me in ocean liners in their comfortable cabins. He says, not any longer. It was brilliant.
Yes.
So good for him. Now,
absolutely. So tell me about this rescue that you were involved in then.
Right. I was over...
Presumably it's not quite as dramatic as this.
Well, it may have been. I was over in Portsmouth, OK? And I had to return to the other side of Portsmouth Harbour, which is Gosport, which is where I live.
Yes.
So I get on board the ferry, and the ferry moves out. Now, these ferries come out sideways because that's, they're sideways up to the pontoon upon which the passengers get on.
Right.
And then they can't pull a propeller out from the back because you'd hit the boat in front.
Yes.
So they have propellers on the side, push them out sideways, you see. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So then it spins round, it's going across the
Is it a car ferry, this?
No, this is a foot ferry only. It's only a foot ferry only.
Right.
It's only to go across Portsmouth Harbour.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes 4 minutes, I think, is the official travelling time.
Is that the boat I was on?
It's about you were on, yeah.
But I only went one way.
You only went one way, yeah. I didn't want you back.
No. That was I discovered I wasn't staying at your place because you only bought me a one-way ticket.
Exactly.
Thanks anyway.
A one-way ticket, a one-way... Anyway, so we get 2/3 of the way across the harbour, and I'm very aware of the seamanship of these ferries, OK? And then
hang on, is it not on a chain as well?
No, it's not on a chain.
Are you sure?
No, you idiot. It's not that place down in...
There's one in Sandbanks, that's not a chain.
No.
Chain ferry.
There's a fleet of them. There's about half a dozen of these ferries. Yeah.
It's about 100 yards.
No, I would say it's probably a mile and a half or something like that across the harbour.
No, it's nowhere near a mile and a half.
No, it might be. I'm not sure. Anyway, so I'm then, because I'm very aware of the navigatory purpose of this
This was Saturday morning, was it?
No, this was Saturday evening. And
I don't know you were aware of much by the time Saturday evening comes around.
That'd be ridiculous. I'd been out and had lunch with somebody for the day.
That's what I mean.
So anyway, I then, as I'm looking at the pontoon to which we're heading on the Gosport side, I suddenly see the front of the boat turning right to the marina, and I'm thinking, hang on.
Going nowhere near your gaff.
Well, I'm thinking something's going on here.
Anyway, sure you're on the right ferry.
Yeah, I was on the right ferry, yeah, absolutely right, yeah. So I dashed to the other side of the top deck, because I was on the top deck, as I always am, and...
it's only got one deck.
No, it's got a lower deck and an upper deck. Yeah, so I was on the top deck.
Right.
So I rush over, and then...
You feel as if you were like Captain Bligh up there,
No, not really, but then I see...
Doing that thing they do on the end of the Titanic, you stick your arms out.
No, then I see 2 men in a boat.
Right.
Now,
it's not unusual in a harbour, really, is it?
Now, the captain had made an announcement saying, ladies and gentlemen, due to a distress signal from a fishing boat within our vicinity...
Sounds like a pilot.
Yeah. We are going to have to go and attempt to bring relief to, So anyway, I rush over and I see, and there are 2 blokes in a boat, but I mean, when he called
it a rowing boat or something.
Well, I was about to say, he called it a fishing boat. It was a rowing boat. In the middle of Portsmouth Harbour, there were 2 guys in a black rowing boat with one stupid little mast, because I think there are rules about having navigation equipment and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think you're supposed to have it,
Yeah, so there's one stupid little mast sticking up in the air, with a little round thing on the top.
Right.
And this bloke who was constantly pulling at a string to try and start his engine.
Right.
But his engine wouldn't start. It's an outboard, yeah. So he was drifting.
Right.
So I thought this could be very dramatic, I'm going to see. And I
imagine this is all happening incredibly slowly as well.
Well, no, it's happening quite fast, really. So I was preparing myself to leap over the rails, because there is a sort of a ladder attached to the side of the boat for these sort of emergencies.
When you just throw them a rope.
Well, what, you mean tow them? Well, they might have been taken on water, that's the problem.
Yeah, well, then you pull them towards the ladder and they can climb up it.
Well,
never done much of this before.
Yeah, but I might have had to go and help them in their trauma to get up the ladder or something like that.
You know, half cut, lobbing yourself over the side.
No, I don't think so. So anyway,
plank overboard.
Anyway, just as I'm preparing and in my head analysing the situation,
the time, by the way.
You know, hang on. The captain suddenly says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we need now to go to the rescue as the harbour master's pilot boat." And I thought, this is demoralising. Right. I wanted to get involved in the rescue. So when we turned around again and went back to Gosport, and as we were heading to the pontoon on the Gosport side, I saw the harbour master's pilot or something coming out, and he just lifted him off the boat. But I don't know what's going to happen to the boat. It was
maybe just let it sink.
Well, it looked like Britain's worst boat, to be honest. It was a rowing boat without
so it's
oars.
not like they had to scramble the air-sea rescuer.
No, they didn't know. But it's the first time I've ever been involved in a dramatic rescue at sea.
Really?
You know what I mean?
You weren't at sea, by the way.
Well, you know,
you were in Portsmouth Harbour.
Well, no, the sea flows into Portsmouth Harbour. You know, it comes around the Isle of Wight and it comes into the harbour, okay?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound like your life was in danger at any point.
Well, you know, I was there. I mean, you've never been involved in a rescue at sea, have you?
No, but I've spent a lot more time at sea than you have.
Why is that then?
Well, because I used to go on sailing trips in a yacht, which is actually a much more difficult thing to manoeuvre around
hang on, mate.
than a motorboat.
I spent 6 days going across the Atlantic in the QE2.
That's a liner.
Yeah.
You weren't in charge of it, were you?
Of course I wasn't in
charge
of it.
Well, I was actually part of the crew sailing a boat.
Well, you wouldn't get me on any boat you were in charge of, mate.
No, don't worry, you wouldn't get invited.
It would sink.
It didn't sink. We had a very nice time.
With your weight alone.
Indeed. That's not a very nice thing to say. This is talkSPORT. You've got an awful lot of tweets coming in about your air-sea rescue that you were
some very
involved
unkind ones.
One here from Stephen. MG, my friend and I were fishing in Portsmouth on Saturday, and a bearded, bladderated weirdo tried to jump off the ferry.
How ridiculous. There's one here from Chris. He says, if Porky had leapt into the boat in the harbour, he'd have caused a mini tsunami. Keep him away.
It's true.
Yeah.
And this from Pete. He said, Porky's pontoon rescue story basically involved him doing nothing.
Well, you know, I was aware.
True.
And Nat here says there's only 2 ferries and it's probably only 500 metres.
Yeah.
Well, I must...
Well, I've been on that ferry. I mean, you're only on it when it crosses from one side of Gosport to the other side of Portsmouth. You're only on it for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But that comes from Nat. Thanks. I must correct Nat, actually. Although the maximum number of ferries working at any one time is 2.
Yes.
And that's at peak hours, right? And it's a non-peak hours is 1 that goes across and then comes back again.
Non-peak hours.
Yeah, that's right. Non-peak hours.
Every hour is non-peak hour down there.
There is at least one more ferry, which is always berthed around the corner. And I think possibly 2. But,
really?
You know, there's the Spirit of Gosport, there's the, you know, Gosport Lady and all this kind of stuff, you know.
What?
You know, they name the ferries. They name the ferries, the Spirit of Gosport and all that, yeah.
Right.
But, anyway,
Scott asked this question. Why is Porky even using a ferry? Being a man of the people, surely he needs to have a jet ski to buzz around Portsmouth Harbour on.
Well,
you could get one of those.
Well, you get wet on a jet ski, and also, you know, there's so much traffic.
You can wear a
going in and out
wetsuit.
of Portsmouth. Well, what's the point of putting on a wetsuit? I'm only going for a couple of beers on the other side.
Yeah,
you know?
why don't you just stay on Gosport side and have a couple of beers there?
Well, I do that sometimes.
I thought you lived opposite the pub.
I live opposite a pub, but in fact I usually take a walk to the Jolly Roger.
Do you?
Which is a rather nice pub around the back of Portsmouth Harbour.
How many pubs did you go to over the weekend?
Let me think. One, just weighing it up now, 2, about 3.
3?
About 3, that's all, yeah.
Quite moderate.
And I had lunch in one of them, yeah. So
who did you have lunch with?
You know, just a friend who's down there at the time.
I
Yeah.
see.
No
Ryan
problem.
says, not exactly the dramatic rescue you promoted that story to be, Porky. Probably looked worse because you were bladderated.
Well, Jane here, you see, being a bit unkind, she says, once again, Porky, another non-story. It's not a non-story, it's a tale of preparation, readiness, preparedness and willingness. And
willingness.
You know, a lot of that is what we all strive to achieve in life.
Is that
Put it
right?
That way, yeah.
Yeah. Now, over the course of the weekend, and we will be perhaps touching on this in Heroes and Villains that we're going to do next hour.
Yeah.
Of course, Lewis Hamilton was presented with the Ayrton Senna helmet, wasn't he? The replica helmet, because he'd won the same number of pole positions, I think
That's
it was,
right, yeah.
as Ayrton Senna had, which was quite an achievement. And did you see any of the tennis, by the way?
Now, the thing is, Andy Murray's exit from the French Open passed me by, because on Friday, after we'd finished our mid-morning show...
Well, we were a bit tired on Friday.
We were a bit tired because we'd worked all night the night before on the election, and I have to admit, when I went home, I was sort of just settling down a bit and didn't take a great notice of... of what had been going on.
Well, it was kind of overshadowed in the media anyway by all the shenanigans around the election, wasn't it?
Of course it was, yeah. So I wasn't even that aware of the fact that Nadal was going for his 10th title, but a magnificent achievement when he did.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Now, I've got some other news for you as well.
Right.
The lineup at Glastonbury this year has been augmented within the last hour or so.
Right.
Guess who's going to be joining the lineup? Your old mate Liam Gallagher.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So, yeah, well, that's good. That's good, because he's a great performer.
Yeah.
And, in fact, he's at his best on the live stage.
He is.
But then he'll have to get the balance right of whether he sings Oasis songs or whether he sings his own songs. What was his band called?
BDI.
BDI, that's right.
Well, he played with BDI there in 2013.
Right, OK. Or whether he actually just sings... songs that he's made, he's recorded and written since then.
Yeah, well, he'll have to do some Oasis.
Yes.
Funny.
Oh, of course he will. Yeah. Do you know that always amazed me, that Paul McCartney travelled the world after the Beatles broke up and had some of the biggest live audiences in the history of live, performances and all that. But that was for playing Wings songs. If I went to see a Paul McCartney concert at any time... Yeah. You'd always be hoping he might,
Well, I'm sure he did the odd song. I mean, he would do Let It Be quite often, wouldn't he? I mean, he did Let It Be at the closing ceremony of the Olympics.
He did, but when I went to see him at the O2 in London, it was Paul McCartney. It wasn't Wings, because Wings consisted of a lot of other musicians, like Denny Lane, who wrote their own songs
and
as well.
Linda as well.
And Linda, that's right.
When she was alive.
Yeah. Now then, listen, I want to talk to you
Johnny
about...
Depp's going to be going to Glastonbury as well.
Johnny Depp, excellent. Yeah, Johnny Depp's had a bit of a rough year, hasn't he? So,
has he?
Well, he has, hasn't he?
Well, he's only made about $75 million.
Well, yeah, but all sorts of allegations about relationships breaking up.
Yeah, but he doesn't think he cares about that,
excessive spending on things like flowers and food and all that kind of stuff, which, he's got every right to spend on. It was his money.
Well, exactly.
Right, now then, tell me this. Of the, the smaller pleasures in life, the things that just make you feel that, well, life isn't so bad after all, would you put sleeping in freshly cleaned bedsheets at the top of your list?
It's certainly up there. It's a very, very pleasant feeling to get into either a hotel bed, which is a brand new kind of, linen scenario, or when you've just done your own sheets and cleaned them and put them on,
What about the pop of a champagne cork?
I quite like that.
Yeah,
I quite like that.
Yeah, or the glorious sound of birdsong.
Do you know, I had a bit of a weird experience actually over the weekend.
Right.
When I was in, funnily enough, last time I was in Borough Market, which is still closed, by the way, unfortunately. So that's why, if anybody's wondering why we haven't done a show from there yet, it's still not open. Hopefully it might open later this week.
I think so. The roads around it are now open, but the inner sanctum of it is not.
Yeah, when I was in Brindisa, which is one of the shops there, very close to where it all kind of kicked off, where it all happened.
Yes.
The Spanish shop I go to regularly, I bought what I thought was a bottle of Prosecco, right? Because it said EM on the front of it. Which is kind of short for Emma, right? That was the the label.
Yes.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, why would that indicate it was Prosecco?
Well, it was a Prosecco-like bottle, right?
I see, okay.
It had a top that looked like it was a Prosecco bottle. I could tell it wasn't champagne because it was not. They don't sell champagne in there. It's a Spanish shop.
Okay.
So I thought it was probably a Spanish version of Prosecco, right?
Right, okay.
So I opened it up on Saturday night, thinking I'll just have a bit of Prosecco, which would be very nice. And I'm drinking it, and I'm thinking, it's quite interesting taste. It's a little bit different from the most Prosecco that I've had. Do you know, it wasn't Prosecco at all.
What was it?
It was cider.
Cider?
It was cider.
Cider?
Yeah, Spanish cider.
Spanish cider.
It was actually rather nice.
Right, okay, but not perhaps strong enough for your requirements at the time.
No, it wasn't so much that it wasn't strong enough, it just had a slightly different flavour.
Okay, but it
was not unpleasant.
So did you stop drinking it in a wine glass and start drinking it in a tumbler, if it's cider?
No,
why not?
Because it was fizzy. I was drinking it in a champagne glass.
Yeah, but it's cider. Cider should be drunk in pint glasses, not champagne flutes.
Well, I was drinking because it was in a champagne-style bottle, right?
Yes.
And it had fizz in it, and when I popped the cork, it went pop, like a champagne bottle does.
Okay.
So I drank it as if it was champagne.
Well, if you say so. Now then, I'm going to...
Sorry to have taken up so much of your time.
No, it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, really.
What I'm saying is that, somebody's done one of these surveys about what are the greatest
what else, then?
Simple moments that give us a lift. So you give me your marks out of 10 for these.
Okay.
Right, hearing the words, I love you.
I love you?
Yeah.
0.
Well, it depends who it comes from,
it depends
I suppose.
who's saying it, yeah.
Right, putting your feet up after a long day.
Yeah, I'd say that's about 5.
I like that.
5.
I like to settle down.
You've got a puff to put them on.
A poof, yeah. Well,
A
I put
poof.
a poof. A poof, we called it in the north. Yeah, the
A
poof.
poof?
Yeah, the poof. Yeah,
A puff, we call it.
No, the poof is what the. It's like a foot
Yeah,
rest.
footstool, yeah.
I always put my feet on my coffee table, actually,
Do you?
and then I crack a glass of something, and then I put on last night's episodes of Coronation Street, and I find that
What
a
a
very
terrible life you've got. How awful for you.
A great end to the day.
Shocking.
Right, now then, how about
What
this
else?
one? I don't know what this means. Belly laughing with your friends.
Belly laughing, oh.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that's sort of slapping each other on the back and being terribly manly. Is that what you mean?
I haven't got.
I'd say zero.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't got a lot of friends.
You haven't got any friends.
Eating fish and chips by the seaside. Yes, I quite rate that
I quite like a bit of that. Yeah.
In fact, I did that on Saturday.
Did you?
I had fish and chips, but I mean,
Well, hang on, I thought you said you had lunch.
I did, but I had magnificent fish and chips. With bread and
by
butter
the
and everything.
seaside?
Yes, by the seaside. Yeah.
Well, that means actually on the beach, though.
Well, no, this is Portsmouth Harbour, so that's by the
Was
seaside.
this before or after the incident with the
It was before the
rescue?
incident, before the incident. Right, now here's one. A hot bubble bath.
Yes, I do like a hot bubble bath.
Well, I can't be bothered getting in and out of baths these
Well, hang
days.
on, you've got that big triangular-shaped bath,
I
haven't
have,
you?
yeah, but it
Do
wastes...
you not go in it anymore?
Not really, not very often. It wastes your time. It's a waste of time getting out of
But
baths.
you haven't got any. You've got nothing to do.
I've got loads to do. Right, sitting in a beer garden on a sunny day.
Yes, I like that.
I'll give that one 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, yeah.
And if you're there as well, just to sort of, expand on it, I'll give it 8 out of 10. Right, now then, sitting in front of a real fire.
Yes,
I
like
love that in a pub in winter.
Yeah.
I love that in a pub in
Well,
winter.
basically everything involves you going to a pub, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I like to have a fire in my house.
Yeah, well, here's a domestic one. Yes, here's a domestic one for you. A cuddle with your children.
Yep.
Obviously.
How do you like that?
Well, I haven't got any children. So if I had a cuddle with any children, I'd get arrested.
Yeah.
Quite rightly.
Yes.
Now, ordering your favourite takeaway.
Well, I don't really
know
get a
about the
thrill out
ordering
of it.
bit. I don't get a thrill out of ordering
I mean,
it.
if you're getting a thrill out of ordering a takeaway, you got problems.
Yeah, I think you got problems as well. The smell
the next thing you'll see the guys coming to take the side off your house to get you out of it.
That's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The fire brigade take the window
time,
out.
by the way.
Don't worry about that. The smell of freshly cut grass.
Yeah, I quite like that.
You don't get that much these days. Devouring an entire bar of chocolate.
Yes.
That revolts me. That sickens me. That sickens me.
You eat a lot of chocolate. You've got a car boot full of chocolate.
I ate a Galaxy whole about 2 weeks ago, and I'm still regretting it.
Why?
Right.
Why?
Well, I felt like a pig. Now
you look a bit like one as well.
Now here's one that might resonate.
Sorry.
See, a stupid comment. There's only one. There's only 2 left. Drinking wine, looking out at a beautiful view.
Yes, I like that.
And finally,
a lot of drinking involved in this thing.
Waking up to birds singing. Now that you see at 4:30 in the morning when I wake up, no, don't be smutty.
I'm not
it's
being
a family
smutty.
show.
No, there are certain birds I don't like.
I
don't like to wake up to a woodpecker.
Well, you don't get woodpeckers.
I've got one in Sussex.
Usually blackbirds sing in the dead of night. And
that's a Beatles song.
Yeah, at 4:30 in the morning, I find that very appealing.
Really?
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay.
Thanks
very much.
Good.
It's very late now.
It's not late.
It is. We're late for the news.
Well,
this
you
is
made it late.
talkSPORT. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mikes on talkSPORT. Coming up in this hour, we're going to have our heroes and villains of the weekend, and certainly we've got plenty of them to choose from. We choose 2 each, and then producer Izzy decides which one of us should win. I think it's about 10-5 to me at the moment. Also coming up this hour, Peter Oborn's going to join us, very political heavyweight in the world of Westminster. We'll find out what's likely to happen this week. Will Theresa May still have a job come the end of the week? 08717 22 3344. You're listening to the Two Mikes with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry on talkSPORT. Now, there's another football match coming up tomorrow, isn't there? For a friendly between France and England.
That's right,
which you mentioned already, Joe Hart's not going to be playing in. I mean, Gareth Southgate, Pep is going to be there, I dare say, watching and learning and hopefully encouraging.
What do you mean?
Well, what's he going to get out of this game?
Well, it's his team.
Yeah, I know it's his team.
He'd be leading them out.
I know, but it's all kind of, after what happened on Saturday in the Scotland game, I mean, it was hardly vintage performance stuff, was it?
It's funny you should say that, because when I've been talking to people about the game, they've all said, what is the point of the England-France game? So, well, no, France-England, obviously it's over in France. why aren't England playing another qualifier? Maybe, away to Malta or something like that, and get that out of the way to finish the group quicker and not put so much burden on the players.
Well, because this whole thing about, I
don't know why they play these as friendlies at the same time when other countries like Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland and Wales are playing competitive matches.
Well, one of the reasons that we're always told that they have all these friendlies is to maintain the sort of the payment schedule for Wembley, right?
Yes.
But presumably they won't be getting much money out of it, and they're not playing it at Wembley, so why bother?
Well, I think the answer to that is, perversely, is that if you invite teams to Wembley to play friendlies, part of the deal usually is that you go back and play on their soil, you know what I mean?
I suppose so, yeah.
And so that's the way it goes round. But I have to say that, we haven't touched on some of the results of the other home countries, in which I will include Ireland. But
yes.
Northern Ireland got a fantastic result, which seems to have gone under the radar. They went to Azerbaijan and won 1-0.
Right.
And they now really are creeping towards, Stuart Dallas scored the goal.
A possible qualifying
Never remember
place.
a name like that, can you? Stuart Dallas.
Stuart Dallas,
it's a great name.
It is a good
name. And they're creeping towards qualification, which would be fantastic for such a small country, but one that's had continued success.
Well, also, what a great
under
tournament.
Michael O'Neill.
What a great tournament they had in France as well, in the Euros. I mean, the fans had a wonderful time. Everybody loved them there, and they were one of the most sort of lauded teams in the tournament, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Until they went out.
Yeah.
The Republic of Ireland did all right as well.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Of course, they did. But
did you see their disallowed goal?
I did. I mean, it was a very, very hard thing to bear. I think they were 1-0 down. Then they got the equaliser. And then the goal at the end. It was such a scrabble on the goal line. It was one of those where, in my view, the referee could neither decide whether there had been an infringement or there hadn't been an infringement.
Yeah.
So I would have let it go.
Yeah, I would have let it go too.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who were watching it in a professional capacity, ex-footballers, said there was definitely an infringement, and you can't tell really whether it's because of the arm going up, or whether it was also handball.
That's absolutely right.
So it seems to be just one of those things, unfortunately.
That's right. Now, Wales, of course, right? They went away and they got a great result in Serbia, but not a great result for their group, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Because they've drawn, I think it's 5 consecutive games now, their points tally isn't what it should be. So if they'd have got 3 points there, they would have... I'm trying to find the...
Well, Chris Coleman's basically said that they need to win every game now.
Well, they've got 8 points, and if they'd got another 2, that would have been 10, put them in touching distance of Serbia and Republic of Ireland, who are the 2 teams above them, and they've got to leapfrog over one of those at least to have a chance of going to the World Cup. So I think Chris Coleman now is possibly facing up to the end of the international dream, so to speak.
Well, they're not going to get 3 points out of every game, are they?
No, they're not, no.
It's not going to happen.
No, I totally agree.
I'm sorry to say.
As you quite rightly say, they've got 4 to play. He says we've got to get maximum points, which is 12, and that will be very, very difficult.
Why was Gareth Bale suspended from playing, by the way, yesterday? I don't remember an incident. Was he because didn't he get sent off, did he?
Well, he could have been an accumulation of bookings, couldn't it? Minus Gareth Bale.
Yeah. He was suspended.
He was suspended. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it must have been a booking tally-up, I suppose, because, no, we can't remember him being sent off, can we? No, we can't, no.
Exactly.
But anyway, look, I think the more teams from the home nations that we get there, the better. Now, on the show coming up next, right, our old friend and colleague, right?
Yeah.
Are you following me?
I'm following you.
Yeah, who is our old friend and colleague?
Our old friend and colleague?
Yeah.
Well, we've got many old friends and colleagues.
Yeah,
Which
who's
one are
coming
you
up next on
referring
the
to?
show, I just said?
Well, you're talking about Peter Oborn.
I'm talking about Peter Oborn.
Yeah.
You paying attention?
Yeah.
You sure?
Of course I'm paying attention.
Because Peter, of course...
This is pretty good coming from you. Whenever I tell you a story, about halfway through you start going,
No.
By which time I know that you haven't listened to an actual word I've said.
Yeah. Peter is what you would call one of the big beasts of the political writing classes.
Yes.
Not the political chattering classes, who are completely different, who just go around mumbling
He's
things
very much
in the
his own man as well.
Very much his own man. He's got a very, very specific view on the outcome of the election, which most people would say was botched.
Yes.
And which was a fiasco, which has led to
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what interpretation Peter puts on it, because, of course, one of the things that happened over the weekend, which we haven't really spoken about, is that Mrs Thatcher lost her 2 trusted aides.
Hey? You mean Theresa May?
Sorry, Theresa May, sorry.
Mrs Thatcher's definitely dead, by the way.
She's definitely dead.
Yeah, she hasn't been Prime Minister for a long time.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Mrs May lost her 2 trusted aides, Nick Timothy and Fiona Hill.
That's right.
And, of course, then those people who have suffered the imposition of authority from Ms Hill and Mr Timothy
they were
started talking.
Enforcers, weren't they? It sounds like from what their behaviour was like, they made Alistair Campbell look like Florence Nightingale.
Well, the one piece I read, which I thought really showed it was that people, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Philip Hammond, right, were keeping notes in personal diaries of all the abuse, personally, from word of mouth, texts, attitudes, cancelled appointments, rubbishings. Were being noted in these diaries so that if they'd have won the election with the majority they thought, they were going to use these against the prospect of them being demoted from the cabinet and say, you're not putting me out if you do. I'm releasing this information about the way your people treat me.
Now, bullied people.
Now they, talk about the hubris and hubris to humiliation. If it had been a victory, right, then on Sunday, Chequers, which of course is the Prime Minister's country home, would have been the scene of a fantastic victory lunch. You can imagine it, can't you? Spilling out over the grounds. And Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy would have been pointed to as the beacons of the victory campaign.
And by the way, if they had one in that way, anyone coming to them and saying, you can't sack me or else I'm going to publish these, would have been slaughtered.
Yes, exactly.
And they would have gone, all right, go for it.
Yeah, that's
we've got a big dossier on you as well.
That's right.
And we'll release that.
But Ms Hill, who was a former journalist from Scotland and a Sky presenter, according to one report I read, a cabinet minister said she once rang me when I suspect she was in the bath. I could hear water splashing and the clinking of a glass and all this sort of stuff,
Maybe she's a swimming pool.
Maybe she was, And he said, but they were terribly dismissive, even to cabinet ministers. And as far as they were concerned, they were the Praetorian Guard around Mrs May. Okay.
Why did we get on to that? I thought we were talking about Wales and their qualifying campaign.
Well, we moved swiftly from the two most important issues.
Because I wanted to mention another goal
in the country. Two most important issues in the country, politics and sport at the moment are the two most important. Okay.
What about Michael Bradley?
Michael Bradley?
Yeah, you know who he is, right?
Bradley?
Yeah. Michael Bradley is the son of Bobcat Bob.
Bobcat Bob!
Yeah. He scored a spectacular goal for the United States of America.
Did he?
Yesterday, yeah. You've got to have a look at it. 40-yarder.
40-yarder.
So a 1-all draw with Mexico.
Good for him.
And that was also in a World Cup qualifier.
Excellent. Well done to him.
So check that out if you haven't seen it. Coming up next is Peter Oborn.
The boy who wouldn't grow up chasing his own tail.
This is talkSPORT. We are the two Mikes. We were here over the course of hours and hours and hours last Thursday and Friday trying to work out what had actually happened. It didn't look as if anybody had won the election. But of course, in the sort of as the dust has been settling over the weekend, special advisors have been fired. Theresa May reshuffled her cabinet a little bit. She's saying she's not going anywhere. Peter Oborn is one of the few voices out there in the political sort of village that is Westminster, saying that, hang on a second, Theresa May actually won the election and she may well end up being one of the most powerful and well-remembered prime ministers of all time. Peter's on the phone now. Let's find out why he thinks that. Peter, very, very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Hi, Pete.
Now, do you feel a bit like the man that's having to point out either, one, the Emperor is, in fact, wearing clothes rather than being completely naked, and that, in fact, the Tories did win the election, and what's all this bleating about?
Well, let's just be honest about this. It was a pretty hefty blow to Mrs May. If you recollect, she had a 25-point lead in the polls when she called the election 6 weeks ago, and now she won it by 1 point, or 2.5 points maybe. And look, and she lost her majority and all of that. But the fact remains, and it is important to recollect this, and the other thing, Corbyn did incredibly well. He really mobilised his supporters. It's great that young people came out and voted, which we've been needing in the country. Even if I personally think they voted probably for the wrong side, it's brilliant for democracy. This and a great achievement by Corbyn. But she has a majority. She's the largest party. That means that constitutionally she has a duty to form a government. She's able to do that in alliance of the Democratic Unionists. And actually, as far as I can see, nothing can bring her down at the moment.
And you wrote a couple of days ago, Peter, you said that she's in a very difficult position, but if she gets out of this difficult position, if she manages to get through, if she manages now to start steaming forward, she will be remembered as one of the great prime ministers. I mean, can anything eradicate the fiasco of what you've just outlined to us, losing a 25-point lead?
I think one of the problems in the way our modern politicians conduct themselves is the moment they have a setback, the Portiers resign and vanish off the stage, like Tony Blair sort of vanished off to advise foreign dictators about that sort of thing.
Where to put their money.
Sort of off he went.
Yeah.
And Osborne, who's beneath contempt, by the way.
Beneath contempt,
And what did she? If she followed that model, the Blair Cameron model, she'd have been out. She'd have gone on Friday morning. You could see she was desperately upset and shocked.
Yeah.
But she had. What I like is that she's stayed up. She's hung around.
Right.
And that takes us back to an earlier model. Harold Wilson.
Yes.
Remember him?
Yes.
I don't know. But anyway, Jim Callaghan. That they had setbacks. They had to fight with minority governments.
Yeah.
And they hung on. And actually, they had to do deals. There were late night votes. There were compromises.
Yeah.
But eventually, that adds up to an achievement.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Well, and also she's having to kind of make sure and ensure herself, I suppose, against the leadership challenge. I mean, we saw Messrs Hill and Timothy thrown under the bus pretty unceremonially when she was told, well, if you don't get rid of these two bullies, then I'm afraid there's going to be a leadership challenge on Monday, which would have been today. I mean, she's having to compromise all the way through, isn't she?
Yeah, so that's one area. I mean, Mrs. Hill or Miss Hill and Master Timothy, they were bullies. They behaved in an outrageous way, but unfortunately, the Prime Minister seems to have had some kind of dependence on them.
Yeah,
and she basically was told, "You're quite right. You've got to get rid of them." Now, can she exist without these two sort of crutches? That's a big question. But again, she's brought in somebody who's very sensible to replace them, called Gavin Barwell, who was a housing minister, Croydon MP. He's a sensible person, and he doesn't go around, swearing and shouting and asserting his muscle. He does things quietly and sensibly.
Yeah,
I feel that there might be some good has come out of it there.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Pete, in your massive experience of politics, I tell you what happened from my amateurish point of view is that the side who thought they didn't have a hope in hell of winning, because I don't know anybody in Labour who said we expected this to happen, just did the usual tactic of telling everybody it'll all be free. We'll have, free student, grants. We will wipe out the other student grants. We're going to have free health care for the elderly people. We're going to have a free national health service. More police. Everything's free. And actually, a certain section of the population have decided, we like that, we'll have that. Now, that is a new political tactic, that if you promise everybody everything for free, they start voting for you. How on earth are the Tories going to counter that next time?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. I didn't think that, even though I admire the way Mr. Corbyn, kept his cool in the election, his sums to me just didn't add up. He's going to keep the triple lock on pensions. He was going to end tuition fees, which actually it worked extremely well.
Yes.
And so on. So, yeah, he'll have to, I think he will come under quite a lot more scrutiny, rightly so, in terms of his economic policies, which mean an explosion of the deficit, which is still out of control, actually, 10 years after the financial crash. So that is the most serious point, I think, made against Mr. Corbyn. That said, I very much admired his foreign policy positions. I didn't like the attacks on him over security. The fact is that we'd be a much safer place if we hadn't had the Iraq war or the Libyan war.
Yes.
And there's a huge amount of questions about Manchester and Libya.
Yeah.
And I mean, Mr. Corbyn has been very clear about those issues and very courageous, been morally courageous on them, because everybody's condemned him. But actually, he was right to say, don't go into Iraq, don't go into Libya, don't go, don't mess around with foreign countries.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to treat him with a lot more respect.
Although when he was saying those things at the time, it wasn't from the point of view that he now professes to have, which is slightly different. So he's been a bit disingenuous about that. But as you say, I mean, he's been more true, I suppose, to his own past than the papers have made him out to be. Also, kind of ironic, I suppose, from his point of view, to see Theresa May winning and then having to get possibly into an agreement with the DUP, who a lot of people are saying are not perhaps as white sepulchre-like as they look.
Yeah, I think we need to get it clear. I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is here. Are they equivalent? They're not quite the equivalent of Sinn Féin, are they? Which was the political wing of the terrorists. But nevertheless, I think they did have... the allegation is, and I think we need to find out exactly what the truth is, because it is an important issue, what relation they did have or do have even. I don't know the answer.
Well, there are certainly some interesting pictures of Peter Robinson with a red beret on, as far as I'm led to believe.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. The point is, Pete, that, and it was put to us on the morning after the election, that when some of the Tory press were banging on about Jeremy Corbyn's relationship with the IRA, the age of the people who were voting for Mr Corbyn didn't know who the IRA were, because that all ended about 10 years ago, the Good Friday Agreement, and therefore they regarded them as almost like Che Guevara figures.
Yeah, more like 15 years ago, wasn't it? The Good Friday
15,
Agreement.
yeah.
Yes, which is, of course, utterly wrong. These are people who slaughtered innocent people, terrorists who slaughtered innocent people in pubs and so on. So,
yes. But young people didn't care about that. They cared about free university fees. Again,
I think that said, I mean, the Mr. McGuinness, for instance, the late Martin McGuinness, ended up going to tea with the Queen. So it's quite a difficult issue, I think, to explain that.
I totally agree, for young people to get their heads around.
Just finally, Peter, are you suggesting, or can you say with any firmness that in the next certainly Theresa May is here to stay for the foreseeable future, certainly until maybe conference season anyway?
Well, I think what I was trying to argue is that if she wakes up, sorts herself out and her way of running a government, there's actually no reason she can't stay for 5 years.
Right.
Now, I think that's a little... I think there are various questions. One, has she got the inner toughness to deal with that, have this new relationship with the cabinet, much more powerful against her than it was?
Yes.
And without her two sort of creatures she had, the Timothy and the Hill, the bearded wonder and Fiona Hill. And then I think there's the issue of has she got the calibre? I mean, it wasn't. She did not. She had a very bad general election. She seemed to, not going to the debates. Yeah. Running away from problems like the social care problem. I mean, it was a very bad general election campaign.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's absolutely horrendous. Peter, listen, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Peter Oborn there, columnist from the Daily Mail, amongst many, many others, with his view on how Theresa May actually be remembered as a pretty good Prime Minister once all of this is over and done with. We shall see. This is talkSPORT.
Right, now then, you're listening to talkSPORT. talkSPORT 2 is the sister station of talkSPORT, and this summer it is also the home of the British and Irish Lions. But if you want to hear every ruck and maul, you need to retune your digital radio or download the talkSPORT app.
Following Saturday's stirring win over the Crusaders, the British and Irish Lions have moved down New Zealand's South Island to Dunedin for the fourth game on tour. Coverage starts from 8 a.m. and the whole game is live on talkSPORT 2. Plus, you can have your say on all the action in the Lions' Den, the dedicated phone-in straight after the final whistle.
Absolutely right. Now, just visit talksport.com/apps or your provider's app store to download today and make sure you do not miss a thing.
We haven't done Heroes and Villains for a while.
No, we haven't.
For one reason or another, but it's time to reinstate it, of course. I think the score is something like, it's about 10-5 or 10-6 to me or something like that. Yes. You're actually not that far away from me in this competition.
No, of course I'm not.
So there's an opportunity for you to catch up and get a little bit closer if you wish.
Yes.
Basically, here's the rules. We have 2 heroes and 2 villains, which we nominate. Izzy, our producer, will choose behind the glass and let us know, perhaps before the end of the show, which one of us is the victor.
Indeed.
Now, you've had all weekend to think of this, so I presume you've got plenty of candidates candidates.
Plenty of candidates.
Would you like to go first?
Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
My first villain of the weekend actually goes back to last Friday's Theresa May.
Right.
Theresa May, who's made a complete mess of the country by holding an election when there wasn't any need to have one.
Okay.
Only because she thought she should improve her her own personal, longevity and her own personal kind of, mark of history by being a very, very successful Prime Minister. Instead, she has kind of banjacks the entire nation, put into jeopardy the whole Brexit negotiations that are due to start in a week. We're just hearing now from Robin there that there's going to be some delay in the Queen's speech, which is meant to be next week.
Exactly.
She's clinging on to power like some demented maniac who should know the difference between a vote of no confidence and all the rest of it. We just spoke to Peter Oborn there, and he said, "Oh well, she's doing very well to hold on." I don't agree. I think she should go. Yeah. And I think she's a villain.
Okay.
So there you are.
Okay, well, my first villain is actually a subtle sort of improvement on that, if you don't mind me saying.
An improvement?
Yes, because my villain is Mr. Philip May, who is the Prime Minister's husband.
Yes.
Now, if you read as deeply into the fiasco as I did over the weekend, I know you don't have time because you have a family and you don't have the inclination because you've got better things to do.
I do enough reading, don't you worry about that.
Mrs. May had a kitchen cabinet of 3 people, and they included Fiona Hill, Nick Timothy, and Mr. Philip May.
Yes.
So when they all sat down and made policy, one of the great accusations is going to be that she completely ignored cabinet policy to the extent that the cabinet didn't even see the manifesto that killed her.
Yeah.
Because if somebody had seen the manifesto and seen the dementia tax being included in it, then somebody would have spoken to them and said, this is not good.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. May was the third advisor.
Yes.
And Mrs. May only seems to have taken advice from Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy, which has killed off her prime ministership. And
well, it may or may not have done, depending on how she goes.
It certainly killed off any chances of getting a majority government of her own. And I think Mr. Philip May, for keeping stum and not, getting involved to save his wife's position, to save the position of the Prime Minister, to save the position of the majority in the House of Commons, which he needed, makes him a villain.
Because he's advised her badly.
He's not advised her. That's the point. He's not advised her. He's watched his wife. Shouldn't you really, if you're man and wife, have your antennae up to look after your partner in life at all times? And he just left her drift into this situation. He's supposedly a very clever man. Yeah. He's supposedly a successful businessman.
Well, they didn't see it coming, did they?
Well, he didn't see it coming. He should have seen it coming. He should have seen coming that she was relying on 2 people who...
Very historical.
No, yours is historical. You're going right back to...
No, mine is about what she's doing
election,
now.
And I'm telling you why it happened, right?
No, mine is much more modern than that.
No.
Well, anyway, never mind arguing about that.
Mine is much more relevant.
My first hero of the weekend is Lee Griffiths. Who shot 2 fantastic free kicks past Joe Hart, past the English defence, and should have led to the victory that Scotland so richly deserved up at Hampden on Saturday. Regardless of whether Joe Hart should have saved them, they were brilliantly taken, one on either side of the goal. He could have taken another 2 and scored another 2. And it was only for Scotland making a couple of silly mistakes towards the end of the game that it all ended up 2-2. His reward, apparently, is that he's likely to end up playing in the Premier League, either for West Brom or Newcastle, coming up in the new season.
Yes.
He's obviously very, very successful up in Celtic, and they may not want to let him go, but if he gets offered a lot of money, he will probably move down here. He has played in the past for Wolves.
I was going to say, he's played in England, but not made a success of it.
Well, yeah, but he hasn't played in the Premier League, and if he comes down to play in the Premier League, I think his left foot and the free kicks, whenever he's one of those players, whenever you see him turning up to take a free kick, you're going to have a big smile on your face.
That's all he can do.
Well, never mind, that's all he can do.
He couldn't play in the Premiership he couldn't get his place in the Premiership side. He's not good enough.
You don't know that.
So it's a very unlikely hero, a guy who can't make it in the Premier League.
He's a massive hero for Scotland because basically they got a great result by drawing with England, and it could have been, for him, one of the greatest victories of all time.
Right, OK. So my first hero, and this may sound obvious, but I have no shame in that, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the Everton player, the England player, who just happens to play for Everton.
Well, he doesn't really, does he? He's only played for him once or twice.
He scored a goal for them. He's played for them 11 times.
11 times.
Okay, so stick that in your pipe and smoke it, all right?
All right. You've done a bit of research into the under-20s results, have you?
Yes, I have.
Amazing.
Yes.
All right.
So Dominic Calvert-Lewin, hero of England, happens to be an Everton player, but, made us world champions for the first time since 1966. What a marker to put on your career at such an early age, and you just cannot argue that boy simply is a national hero.
A national hero, indeed. I'm sure he is. My second hero is Rafa Nadal. Rafa Nadal, a man who won the French Open for the 10th time at the weekend. Everyone thought this guy was finished.
Yes.
He had a terrible injury a few years ago from which we thought he wouldn't come back.
Yes.
And when he did come back, he didn't look quite as good as he had been. But, I mean, this is a man who has won practically every game he has ever played at the French Open. I think bar one.
Two.
Yeah, I think one or two games. I mean, what an incredible man. And he's going to be coming back, hopefully, and being a star at Wimbledon. We might know more about what seed he's going to be very shortly. Andy Murray is hopefully going to be in good form as well. But I think Rafa Nadal's achievement over the weekend to win the French Open was brilliant.
Okay, well, my second hero is Richard Hammond.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Hammond is the former Top Gear presenter, as you all know, with old Jeremy Clarkson.
That's right.
And he's had appalling crashes in the past, one in particular when he was rushed to hospital in a coma, but he still does these very exciting, adventurous.
Well, because he's still making a television show.
He is. He's making the new show with Jeremy Clarkson.
And the other guy, whose name you've forgotten, right?
No.
Well, there's three of them, isn't there?
Yeah, but I don't care about that. Okay. I'm talking about Richard Hammond, okay?
Right.
And
what's the new show called?
That's irrelevant. And the great thing about this is that he's managed to crash a car again. But despite the fact that he's had at least two of these in the past, he is still going strong and still deciding to put his life on the line for the new show that he's making with Jeremy Clarkson. He was in a car that rolled. He just about got out in time, and then it burst into flames.
Yeah.
And I have to say, a guy with that sort of courage can only be a hero.
Really?
It's the Grand Tour, by the way, is the new programme he's making.
Found it, have you?
But no, which of course I knew, but I wasn't going to give you the satisfaction of telling you that.
You found the other guy's name yet?
It doesn't matter the other guy's name. Right. Just get on with it.
My final villain of the piece this weekend is Maria Sharapova, the woman that you absolutely adore and love.
Yes.
Because she's rather nice looking. The trouble is...
And she's a great tennis player,
she was banned from playing tennis due to a breach of the rules on doping, right?
Yeah.
She's been called a cheat by some of the other top tennis players.
Yes.
She's now not going to be playing at Wimbledon because apparently she's injured. And I call that tennis karma. Right? She's going to miss the entire grass court season. She retired with a thigh problem for the second round match of the Italian Open on the 16th of May. And she's basically, because she shouldn't be playing in any of these tournaments because she shouldn't be getting wild card entry. She shouldn't be. She should have to play her way in. And I think fair dues that she's injured. And I'm glad she's not playing at Wimbledon because I think she's a villain.
I think that's very weak. That's a very weak nomination.
Right. Well, luckily you don't decide these things. That's why I'm winning it so much.
So my second villain, right?
Yeah.
The programme director of the BBC Two programme that brought us our first world champions in 1966, who then at the end was presumably responsible for cutting off the coverage of that magnificent event before the boys had lifted the trophy. No.
Have you not?
No.
Okay.
Before they lifted the trophy, okay? Viewers gripped by the 1-0 victory over Venezuela. But when with skipper Lewis Cook about to raise the trophy, BBC Two switched to the UK leg of the World Triathlon Series in Leeds.
Yeah, good.
And that got everybody very, very fed up.
Really?
We wanted to see a moment of sporting history, and it was denied us.
I see. A lot of people making some...
Villain!
Well, he's clearly not a villain. What's his name?
Villain.
Who is he?
Doesn't matter.
So you don't know who it is?
He's so far not identified himself, but whoever he is, he's a villain.
So you've made somebody that doesn't exist a villain?
No. I said I said the guy who pulled the plug on that is the villain.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll nominate the BBC as the villain then, okay?
All right.
Because he works for them.
Okay. What, the entire company?
Well, I'm saying they have to take responsibility.
Seems a bit harsh.
Yeah.
That was Heroes and Villains. I think that was possibly Porky's worst performance ever.
Oh, no, it was your worst performance. Sharapova.
This is the Two Mics on talkSPORT with Wicks. Right now there's 3 for 2 across gardens and landscaping, including all decking and wood care. Now, there's a lot of tweets coming in on the subject of heroes and villains.
Yes.
Darren says, how blatantly blinkered of Porky picks an Everton kid out of a team of heroes, especially when a now LFC lad was man of the tournament. That's true. A young Liverpool boy.
Yeah, but he scored the winning goal. Come off it. You know, I said I fully praised all members of the team, including those from Liverpool, because there's a great Merseyside representation. But Calvert-Lewin scored the winning goal, and you can't get better than that in a World Cup final.
Charlie says the topic for the next Porky quiz should definitely be the history of the Under-20 World Cup. He seems to know all about it.
Yeah, well, you know...
Hashtag 0 out of 10.
I'm a very well-read individual.
Jonathan's not so sure. He says, Porky worked 24 hours in a row last week. He doesn't seem to have slept over the weekend. The man is cracking up.
No, I'm not cracking up at all. I tell you what I was disappointed about.
What's that?
You know, our battle for Tommy the Chimp.
Yes.
In New York.
It's been lost, hasn't it? Well, it's nice to me. It's not our battle, it's your battle.
Yeah, well...
Nothing to do with me.
What I'm annoyed about is that the bid to give chimps human rights has failed. 2 chimpanzees kept in cages do not have the same legal rights as people.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that was inevitable, wasn't it?
Well, it's a US Appeal Court ruling.
Yes, I know. Yeah, that happened a few days ago.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, no, but this has only just been endorsed, you see. And I Tommy is one of them.
There's 2, isn't there?
There's Tommy and Kiko.
That's right.
And they're kept in these concrete cages, which is an absolute outrage. We wanted them moved to a large outdoor facility in Florida, but that's not yet happened. And we wanted to grant them a writ of habeas corpus, which for people relates to whether someone is being unlawfully detained or imprisoned.
When you say we?
And should be taken for... Well, the movement. I'm talking about the movement.
What movement?
The movement. The movement. We have to try and free Tommy the Chimp.
But you're not in that. There's a lawyer that we spoke to, right?
Yes, that's right.
Who's employed to try and do that and make it happen.
Yes.
I'm not sure that you can put yourself in that same category.
Well, morally I'm there, that's for sure.
That's the main thing.
Yes.
Heroes and villains...
Why'd you snigger?
Because you just make it up as you go along.
Well, are you doing anything to help animals that are locked up around the world? No, of course you're not.
No, I'm doing exactly the same as you're doing, except I'm not pretending to be doing anything.
Anyway,
that's the only difference.
Paul here says, heroes and villains very close this week, possibly a draw, unless Porky can get his Belfast... bros to swing it. Yeah.
Gabriel says, Hammond a hero, ? The man's an idiot. If you're in an accident like that once, it's unlucky. 2 or 3 times, it's stupidity.
But he keeps going back again and again and again. Right. And he's a brave man, and a brave man is a hero.
Unfortunately, as a result of you picking Richard Hammond, you've lost. Because it's just been explained to me by Izzy, our very fine producer, who's chosen me as the winner in this week's Heroes and Villains. She said, actually, until you said Hammond, it was a draw.
Right. Okay.
Because she quite liked the BBC one.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. There's a clear lack of understanding there about the principles involved in bravery.
Be very careful. You don't slag off the producer because we've got a long way to go on this show.
You're a hero if you know that there's a dangerous situation in which you're immersing yourself, but you still get in that car and you go. That's a hero. That's a true hero.
Well, no,
he's doing it for the entertainment of millions.
He's doing it for a stunt.
No.
And he's causing, an awful lot of people an awful lot of anguish.
99999.
What's wrong with you?
I'm not having it.
You're not having it?
Right, now then. So that's your verdict, OK?
Well, it's not my verdict. It's Izzy's verdict. Yeah, she has ruled, so that makes it 11-5.
11-5.
So it's actually, I've got an even bigger lead now than I had before.
Now, I understand you're eating kippers over the weekend.
Yes, I was eating kippers
over the weekend. So why do you always have a go at me when I tell you I'm eating kippers, and yet you...
Well, because mine didn't come out of a tin.
Well, hang on. Why are you eating...
You say that you buy them out of a tin, right?
Yes, I do, yes.
You buy tinned kippers.
John West tinned kippers. Yeah. And they are beautiful.
Well, that's like a difference. That's like saying why you was having a go at me for eating salmon out of a tin.
There's nothing wrong with salmon out of a tin.
Well, there isn't.
Tin salmon is served at the Dorchester.
Yeah, but it's
let
not.
me tell you.
Tin salmon is served at the Dorchester.
It is, yeah.
In what capacity?
Well, in the capacity that when you ask for, like, a salmon salad or something like that... Actually, I better withdraw that, because I'm not sure that tin salmon is served at the Dorchester.
I don't think it is.
I will immediately withdraw that. But what I'm saying is...
They serve proper salmon, I think you'll find at the Dorchester.
Tin salmon... is served at places like the Dorchester. Like the Dorchester.
What sort of places? Like the Grosvenor House?
Other places, maybe.
The Hilton Park Lane?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because it is the perfect way to store and serve salmon.
Funny enough, I made some really nice salmon, actually, the other day.
But sorry, what these kippers, first of all? Why are you eating kippers mid-afternoon?
It was sort of brunchy type thing. I was, I'd been out and I hadn't really had any breakfast, and so I decided it was a good idea to have a sort of a brunchy type meal at around about midday.
Yep.
And I'd had these kippers because I'd picked them up in this rather nice place in Shoreditch actually.
Yes.
When I was in London, and I thought, time for some kippers, and I love a kipper once in a while.
Yeah.
No, too often.
I love kippers
And they were from the Orkney Islands, would you believe?
Between some dry white bread with no butter or anything on it, absolutely lovely.
Kipper sandwich.
Yeah, kipper sandwich. Yeah.
But
Beautiful.
presumably that's because when you get them in a tin, they come in oil or something, do they?
They come either in sunflower oil, or you can have them in brine. And I prefer the brine because it makes them less sort of greasy.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can also get them in tomato sauce, but I don't know why anybody would want to immerse kippers in tomato sauce.
That's horrendous.
Not for me.
That is horrendous. Also, the best way to have kippers is with a poached egg, actually.
Well, I don't eat eggs, so I wouldn't know anything about that, you see.
All right.
And how can you make salmon? You can't make salmon. Salmon is a fish. You don't make salmon.
No, well, you cook it, though.
Yeah, okay. So, but you said, I made some salmon. I made a souffle. You don't make salmon. So you can process.
It's probably because you interrupted me before the end of the actual conversation. What I would have said in the whole sentence was, I made some salmon which I marinated in a very nice sort of marinade that I made myself.
What did you marinate it in?
Lemon juice.
Lemon juice. Okay.
A little bit.
So you mean you soaked it in lemon juice?
No, lemon juice.
That's not exactly marinated.
Ginger. Some chilli. Sliced chilli, and what else did I put in? A little bit of fish sauce.
Okay.
It was lovely.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have enjoyed it because I don't eat garlic.
I didn't say garlic.
What did you say? Sorry, I thought
This is the 2 Mics on talkSPORT with Wix. Every day we give away a £100 Wix gift card to the best caller. Today's winner is Tom, the Reading fan, who said that clubs should play more young players in cup competitions to help with their development. You called him naive. But I liked what he had to say.
And I didn't call him naive. I said he made a great point.
He's got £100 coming as a Wix gift voucher anyway.
I'm delighted. A very worthy winner.
Yes.
Well done, my son.
Indeed. Coming up next is Hawksby and Jacobs. I'll see you tomorrow.
Indeed.
This is talkSPORT. Don't forget to follow the 2 Mics at the 2 Mics on Twitter and on YouTube. Just look for 2 Mics TV.